Chapter 631. Lin Yating bit her lips. The medicine that she had asked Cho Ping to give to this young man would not be wrong. Moreover, Lan Hong had indeed determined that his body had an illness before. But why did it change so quickly? What on earth had happened in the midst of all this? Luo Fu had a complicated expression on his face. He was the one who had instructed Lin Yating to do this. That was why he wanted to fabricate a false conclusion. However, he knew that with so many elders as witnesses, he could not fabricate a false conclusion. He sighed helplessly. He really is not ill. A person who was not ill was participating in the test. There was probably no one in the world who didn't know what this represented. That was why the entire plaza was in an uproar. This young man is not ill. Why did he fabricate a false diagnosis? He even caused us to misunderstand this lady. Do you think that there are people who are not ill among the people we are going to treat? Looks like the Doctors Association is not completely trustworthy. What if we can't diagnose the patient's illness? Does that mean that we have failed as well? Hearing the discussions, the elders' expressions turned ugly. Some of the more hot-tempered ones even flew into a rage. Luo Fu, this meeting was hosted by your disciple. How could something like this happen? You have to give us an explanation. That's right. We have to give everyone an explanation so that the Doctors Association's reputation isn't tarnished. Luo Fu's expression darkened. He turned to Cho Ping and asked, Cho Ping, what did you do? I asked you to assist Yating and you made such an unforgivable mistake. Cho Ping was stunned. He looked at Luo Fu's sharp gaze and sighed in his heart. He knew that Elder Luo Fu wanted to sacrifice himself to protect Lin Yating. However, he was the one behind this. Lin Yating had only given him a few instructions. Master, I know I was wrong. Cho Ping knelt on the ground with a thud. When he looked down, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. This has nothing to do with Senior Sister Yating. I really don't like Yun Luofeng. That's why I wanted to kick her out. He raised his head and glared at Yun Luofeng furiously. Senior Sister Yating was so polite to her, but she didn't know what was good for her. Furthermore, I overheard that she was planning to frame Senior Sister Yating. Luo Fu looked at Cho Ping in shock. She framed Yating? Why? Why? Cho Ping was startled. He had only said it casually. He hadn't thought of a reason yet. Because. He clenched his fists tightly, and a thought flashed through his mind. Because she heard that the Ghost Emperor was invited to the Doctors' Conference this time. Furthermore, the Doctors' Association planned to invite the Ghost Emperor to be the referee. At that time, the Ghost Emperor, as the judge, would have to interact with Senior Sister Yating. She had wanted to hurt Senior Sister Yating out of jealousy. Master, I just want to strike first and gain the upper hand. Hearing Cho Ping's angry words, some people who didn't know what was going on took him seriously. Cho Ping, what did you just say? Lin Yating frowned. Did you really hear me? Yun Luofeng wants to hurt me because of this. Based on Lin Yating's understanding of Cho Ping, she knew that he was making things up, but that didn't stop her from adding fuel to the fire. Because she understood that after today's events, it was impossible for Yun Luofeng to submit to her. Chapter 632. So what if they shed all pretense of cordiality? Since she refused to submit, she could only die. Senior Sister Yating, I heard this with my own ears. It's not false, Cho Ping vowed. Yun Luofeng has long been in love with the Ghost Emperor. She came here to see the Ghost Emperor. The Ghost Emperor would never spare a second glance at a shameless woman like her. That's why she was jealous that Senior Sister Yating had the chance to interact with the Ghost Emperor. She wanted to frame her. Cho Ping spoke as if he was telling the truth and everyone believed his words. This woman looks like a decent person, but she's actually this kind of person. She would do anything to get a man. TSK, you really can't judge a book by its cover. Unfortunately, I heard that the Ghost Emperor has no interest in women, so she's destined to have a pipe dream. Yun Luofeng did not seem to notice the crowd's mockery. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Cho Ping. What else do you have to say? Why don't you tell me everything? Cho Ping was stunned. He could not understand how this girl could remain so calm in the face of his false accusations. Did she not want to defend herself? Qiu Ping gritted his teeth and said, "Furthermore, I can prove that Yun Luofeng's medical skills aren't very good. Yesterday, when I was ordering Ling Yin to pretend to be sick, I accidentally saw her disciple. It must have been her little disciple who eavesdropped on our conversation. Yesterday, Lin Ruobai had indeed been playing with milk tea nearby and had disturbed Qiu Ping, who had been hiding in his room discussing something. Lin Ruobai had not heard their conversation, but that did not stop Qiu Ping from framing them. Elder Rong scoffed and asked sarcastically, "Then how do you explain how Yun Luofeng managed to break through your cover with just a few tricks?" He. Qiu Ping's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Elder Rong, if you want to know, I can give you an explanation. I was indeed careless in this matter. I gave Ling Yin the medicine too early and it caused the medicine to lose its effect." "Do you really think it was because of Yun Luofeng?" When Ling Yue heard Qiu Ping's words, she opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something. However, when she saw Qiu Ping's cold gaze, the words stuck in her throat. She couldn't say them, nor could she swallow them. "It's easy to prove my medical skills." Yun Luofeng glanced at Qiu Ping, paused, and said, "I can heal all the patients here in half an incense stick's time." As soon as the young girl's voice fell, it caused a burst of laughter. Recover all the patients in half an incense stick's time? Was this a joke? With so many people in the square, it would take more than half an incense stick to burn just to diagnose the illness. She still dared to boast. Yun Luofeng, Lin Yating raised her eyebrows and said in a neutral tone, "You should take back your word. Otherwise, you will definitely regret it. I'm doing this for your own good. I can't bear to see you lose face in public." Yun Luofeng acted as if he didn't hear Lin Yating's warning, and didn't answer her question. "If I can cure all the patients in half an incense stick's time, then the dragon crystal sword as the prize for the doctor's assembly will be given to me. In addition, I want the medical city to disappear from this day forth. I want the medical city to disappear." How domineering did she have to be for her to say such words at this moment? Perhaps, in the entire Roaring Dragon continent, no one would dare to say that the medical city would disappear. Chapter 633. Lin Yating's expression finally showed a trace of change. The elegance on her face could not be maintained. Her beautiful eyes coldly stared at the young girl in the plaza, and a trace of coldness flashed through her eyes. "Yun Luofeng, I agree to your conditions." No matter how strong her medical skills were, it was impossible for her to save so many people in half an incense's time. Moreover, so what if she succeeded? At that time, if the Doctors' Association refused to admit it, there was nothing she could do. After all, the Doctors' Association would not let the medical city disappear just like that. "Elder Rong, do me a favor." Yun Luofeng turned to look at Elder Rong and said slowly, "What is it?" Elder Rong smiled and asked, "I'll write you a few prescriptions later. You have to decoct them for me according to the prescriptions. You have to succeed in half an incense's time." "All right, little girl Yun, don't worry. I will do as you say." Elder Rong's expression became slightly serious. He knew that this matter was of great importance, and Yun Luofeng had entrusted such an important matter to him. What kind of trust was this? He would never let him down. "I'm afraid your medical pavilion doesn't have enough manpower." Elder Lan Hong, who had been silent all this while, continued to speak. "I'll have my disciples help you." If it was any other elder who said this, Elder Rong would definitely refuse. Who knew what kind of poison those people would put in the medicine? However, Lan Hong was different. He was the only clear stream in the Doctors' Association. Back then, when the experts of the medical city chased after Yun Qingya and the Doctors' Association stood up to protect the medical city, he was the only one who raised an objection. It was precisely because of this that he was not welcomed in the medical city. Not long after, a disciple of the association took out an incense burner and lit an incense stick in it. A light breeze blew, and the incense emitted an intoxicating smell. "You can begin." Lin Yating flicked her sleeves and sat down. Her cold gaze fell on Yun Luofeng's body, and the corner of her lips curled up into a smile. In the Doctors' Association, anyone who fought with her could only lose. Yun Luofeng didn't say anything. She took out a pack of silver needles from her sleeve. After sterilizing them with fire, the silver needles landed on a patient's body with a shua sound. She didn't even feel the pulse and directly inserted the needle. This is simply looking down on life. She didn't even know what illness the patient had before she started treating him. Looks like Cho Ping was right. She really doesn't have any strength. Everyone was shocked by Yun Luofeng's actions. Even the elders of the Doctors' Association were frowning. From their point of view, Yun Luofeng's actions were completely disregarding the patient's life. As a fellow physician, how could she allow herself to be so careless? After Yun Luofeng tested the needle on one person with extreme speed, she quickly flashed in front of another person. Her speed was too fast, so fast that the naked eye couldn't catch her. In less than half an incense stick's time, she had finished performing acupuncture on everyone. Following that, the medical pavilion and Lan Hong's subordinates walked over with bowls of medicinal soup. Yun Luofeng only needed to sniff the side of the bowl to determine which prescription had been used to brew the medicine. He immediately ordered someone from the medical pavilion to bring it to the patient. As long as you drink the medicinal soup that I specially concocted, everyone's illness will recover. Just as Yun Luofeng finished speaking, the patients drank the medicine. The instant the soup entered their stomachs, they felt the pain in their bodies gradually lessen. Chapter 634. Let me take a look at their conditions. Lan Hong quickly walked in front of the patients and placed his fingers on their pulses. After sensing the changes in the patients' bodies, he was slightly stunned. When the other elders saw this, they also went forward to diagnose the patient. How is this possible? How is this possible? Luo Fu was also stunned by his own diagnosis. He took 2 steps back and his expression suddenly changed. This is impossible. Where are the other patients? Let me take a look at the other patients' conditions. Thinking of this, Luo Fu hurriedly squeezed the elder next to him and took his place. At first, Luo Fu was only shocked. In the end, his shock turned into despair. Before the start of the conference, he had already seen these patients, so he was very clear about their condition. But now, he could clearly feel that these people's conditions were gradually recovering. This young girl really saved all the patients in half an hour. She had not even taken their pulses and she had already diagnosed their conditions. Luo Fu's face was pale. He staggered a few times and almost fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with despair as he looked at Lin Yating on the high platform. A bitter smile appeared on his lips. This time, Yating had really been too careless, but no one would have thought that this young girl's medical skills would be this high. Even the president could not compare to her. A miracle, this is a miracle. Lan Hong's eyes shone as he looked at Yun Luofeng. Girl, are you interested in joining my faction? Yun Luofeng shook her head. I don't plan on joining the Doctors' Association. I see. Lan Hong felt that it was a pity but he did not say anything else. He smiled and said, if you want to join the Doctors' Association in the future, just tell me. I will definitely welcome you. Lin Yating had said the same thing to her before, but it gave off a completely different feeling. Lin Yating gave her the feeling that she was giving alms. Elder Lan Hong, on the other hand, had a sincere heart that loved talent. Yun Luofeng smiled and did not reply to Lan Hong. Her gaze turned to Lin Yating and she raised an eyebrow. She asked, I won. Can I fulfill my promise? Lin Yating took a deep breath and suppressed the unwillingness and jealousy that almost surged out of her heart. She said coldly, I can give you the dragon crystal sword. What about the medical city? Yun Luofeng asked with a faint smile. I'm sorry, I can't make the decision for the medical city. In other words, she would never hand over the medicine city. Yun Luofeng, don't push your luck. When Cho Ping saw that Lin Yating was being bullied, he immediately jumped up. Medical city is a subordinate force of our Doctors' Association. If we were to hand the medical city over to you, then where would our Doctors' Association put its face? You'd better stop while you're ahead, lest you get yourself into trouble. Boom. Just as Cho Ping finished speaking, the girl on the square suddenly raised her hand. In that instant, a powerful aura shot out from her sleeves. With a loud bang, Cho Ping's body fell from the high platform. You talk too much nonsense. The girl raised her head and looked at Cho Ping. She was arrogant. Yun Luofeng. Lin Yating's face instantly turned cold. I've tolerated you time and time again, but I didn't expect you to be so rude. How dare you openly injure someone in my doctor's association? You're simply looking down on our association. Yun Luofeng turned his head and looked at Lin Yating evilly. Doctor's association? Isn't it just a place that doesn't fulfill its promise? Whether you agree or not, the medical city will be destroyed. Chapter 635. Lin Yating laughed coldly. If you really have the ability, I don't mind you making a move. Unfortunately, what ability do you have to deal with the medical city? Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better take care of the General Yun residence first. Otherwise, when you return to the family, all that awaits you is a pile of corpses. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and looked at Lin Yating coldly. What do you mean by that? Yun Luofeng, you've offended too many people. The others will not tolerate you like I do. They might have already rushed to Long Yuan country to deal with your family. Boom. The young girl's aura surged out, and her eyes grew colder. Lin Yating, if a single hair of the Yun family is harmed, I will make your life a living hell. Yun Luofeng, I'm just giving you a warning. After all, I will not do anything to your family. Lin Yating laughed coldly. But whether the others will do the same, I don't know, Yun lass. Seeing that Yun Luofeng was on the verge of exploding in anger, Elder Rong hurried forward and held her shoulders. Don't worry, with Elder Ning here, nothing will happen to the Yun family. Furthermore, our medical pavilion lord is currently in Long Yuan country. He is also very strong, and the people Lin Yating sent will not be able to harm them. Even so, Yun Luofeng would not allow anyone to have any designs on her family. Even if these people could not harm the Yun family, Elder Rong, do me a favor, Yun Luofeng said slowly. Send people to find my second uncle's whereabout. Second uncle went to the forest of no return to cultivate for the sake of seeking revenge on the medical city. I do not wish to take away his chance. There was nothing more satisfying than killing one's enemy with one's own hand. This was also the reason why Yun Luofeng did not make a move on the medical city when he first arrived at the Doctors' Association. If second uncle did not personally witness the deaths of his enemies, how would he be able to heal the scars that had plagued his heart for so many years? All right. Elder Rong did not think too much before agreeing. I will send everyone in the medical pavilion to search for Lin Qingya. Once I have news of him, I will inform you immediately. Although I will let second uncle personally witness the destruction of the medical city, this does not mean that I will not collect some interest. Yun Luofeng's lips curled up as he narrowed his eyes at Lin Yating. Yun Luofeng, you want to fight me? Lin Yating frowned. You better think this through. I'm not Cho Ping. You won't be able to sneak attack me. Who said I was going to ambush you? Yun Luofeng sneered. Her body flashed and she quickly rushed towards Lin Yating. At this moment, she no longer concealed her aura and it instantly erupted. Heavenly spiritualist. After Luo Fu sensed the girl's strength, he turned pale with fright. She's actually a celestial spirit practitioner. Not good. Yating is in danger. At this moment, Luo Fu couldn't care less about his reputation. He quickly moved in front of Lin Yating and extended his hand to block Yun Luofeng's attack. Boom! A powerful force landed on Yun Luofeng's palm. Immediately, her body moved back a few steps, and a deep mark appeared on the ground. How shameless! Elder Rong looked at Luo Fu with disdain. An old man over 100 years old has the nerve to fight a teenage girl. Luo Fu swept a cold glance at Elder Rong before turning back to Yun Luofeng. Killing intent surged out from his body. Yun Luofeng, to think that you'd be able to break through to the heavenly spiritualist realm at such a young age. Whether it's talent or medical skills, I admire you greatly. If you're willing to become my disciple, I can forgive you. Otherwise, I can only kill you for the crime of violating the association's rules. Chapter 636. Lan Hong could not stand it any longer and stepped forward. He frowned and said, Luo Fu, how could you threaten a young lady? Besides, if Lin Yating had not used her family's lives to threaten her, she would not have been so angry. I think we should just forget about it this time. What do you think? Threaten? Luo Fu laughed icily. When has Yating ever threatened her? She's clearly reminding her not to be too savage in case she offends someone she shouldn't offend and brings disaster to her family. Yating clearly meant well, but she doesn't appreciate it. Lan Hong shook his head in exasperation. But isn't what you're saying to Lady Yun a threat? Why do you insist on making her your disciple? Lan Hong, you'd better mind your own business. Luo Fu furrowed his brows. If she doesn't want to be my disciple, I'll have no choice but to kill her. After all, she's provoked the Doctors' Association. If she's a member of the association, she can be forgiven. Otherwise, she'll die. Lan Hong smiled slightly. Based on Lady Yun's talent, she doesn't need to be your disciple. Besides, you're not the only elder in the Doctors' Association. She doesn't have to be your disciple. Lan Hong's words seemed to have worked and caused the elders to regain their senses. They hurriedly rushed towards Yun Luofeng. Lady Yun, that fellow Luo Fu isn't a good person. You must not become his disciple. Come to my sect and I'll protect you. That old thing Luo Fu won't dare to do anything to you. Why should I let Lady Yun go to your sect? I think that my sect is the most suitable for Lady Yun. As long as you follow me, not only will I protect Lady Yun, I will also protect her family. Lady Yun, I'm deeply sorry about what happened to your second uncle that year. As long as you join my side, I will definitely seek justice for your second uncle. On this mainland, the strong were revered. That was why everyone was so realistic. If Yun Luofeng was a good-for-nothing, they would not even have the time to help Luo Fu. Why would they say such things? The reason for these people's actions was because of Yun Luofeng's extraordinary medical skills, as well as his shocking talent. Luo Fu looked at the traitors and his elderly features changed drastically. He shouted sternly, "What are you doing? Yun Luofeng is causing trouble at the Doctors' Association, and you guys are still fighting over her? Luo Fu, stop it. Don't think that we don't know that you want to take Lady Yun for yourself. You've done so many things to hurt her, how could she still be your disciple? And if she joins the Doctors' Association, you won't be able to shake her." All the elders revealed looks of disdain when they heard Luo Fu's words. To them, there was nothing more important than Yun Luofeng. Just as everyone was fighting endlessly, a powerful aura suddenly rushed over from the sky nearby, instantly attracting everyone's attention. When everyone looked up, a snow-white figure came into view. The old man stood with his hands behind his back and stepped through the void. It was as though white lotuses had sprouted beneath his feet and he had the demeanor of an immortal. In particular, the aura surging from his body was incomparably powerful. Yun Luofeng also discovered the old man's figure and raised his eyebrows slightly. This old fellow seemed to have changed into another person, and was no longer the scoundrel he was familiar with. "What are you fighting about?" The old man's voice was calm as he slowly walked down from the sky. It was as if a flight of stairs had appeared beneath his feet, and he was slowly walking down that invisible flight of stairs. Chapter 637. The elders were overjoyed when they saw the old man walking towards them. They could not be bothered to argue as they hurriedly stepped forward and greeted him respectfully. "Lord Tianye, you've arrived." Tianye? Those who had not seen Tianye before were first stunned when they heard how the elders addressed the old man. Then, their eyes filled with wild joy. It looks like they had made the right decision to come to the doctor's meet this time. They had actually met godly Dr. Tianye here. Millimeter. Tianye stood in the middle of the elders with an indifferent expression. He had the demeanor of an immortal. He was a completely different person from the little old man who had once pestered Yun Luofeng. If Yun Luofeng had not seen Tianye's true nature, perhaps he would have really treated him as a highly respected old man. "Tell me, what were you arguing about earlier?" Tianye frowned slightly and asked calmly. "It's like this." Lan Hong was afraid that Luo Fu would make a false accusation and hurriedly stepped forward to explain. This Lady Yun has a grudge against Luo Fu's disciple. However, Luo Fu has taken a fancy to her talent and wants to force Lady Yun to become his disciple. He claims that if Lady Yun wants to live, she can only become his disciple. However, all of us also want to accept Lady Yun as our disciple. That's why we're arguing. Oh. Tian Yue pretended to be profound. You want Lady Yun to become your disciple? If she becomes your disciple, how should I address you? At this moment, Tian Yue's expression was very ugly. She never thought that so many things would happen just because she had arrived a little late. Especially since these people actually dared to make Yun Luofeng their disciple. In this way, wouldn't she have to address them as Grand Masters? How could the arrogant Tian Yue tolerate this? What does Lord Tian Yue mean? Lan Hong was stunned. His brain could not react in time as he asked in a daze. What do I mean? Tian Yue's expression was very ugly, so dark that water could drip from it. My meaning is very clear. You want Lady Yun to become your disciple. When I see you in the future, should I also address you as Grand Masters? Boom. Like a bolt from the blue, everyone's body trembled as they looked at Tian Yue in astonishment. What did he just say? If Yun Luofeng became their disciple, he would have to call them Grandmasters. One must know that only one's own master's benefactor would be addressed as Grandmaster. Did Lord World's Edge mean that Yun Luofeng was his master? Luo Fu's face instantly turned pale, his old body swaying in the wind. He hurriedly held onto the tree beside him to prevent himself from falling to the ground. I misheard. I must have misheard. Looks like I need to go back and treat my ears. How could Yun Luofeng be Tian Yue's master? I must have misheard. That's right, he must have misheard. Such a thing would never happen. Luo Fu comforted himself. However, before he could force himself to believe these words, he saw Tian Yue walk towards Yun Luofeng. A calm smile was maintained on his aged face, as if he was an enlightened master, making it impossible for anyone to ignore him. Little girl, I'm late. He smiled indifferently, no longer having that shameless face from before. Tian Yue, Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose and smiled evilly. I'll give you 99 points for your performance when you first appeared. 1 point less is because I don't want you to get arrogant. Chapter 638. Tian Yue was at a loss. He looked at Yun Luofeng in confusion. What do you mean? All in all, I have one thing to say. Your actions just now were too pretentious. In comparison, I still prefer your shameless face. The girl's words made Tian Yue's face fall. His eyes were filled with resentment. Girl, there are so many people here. Can't you at least give me some face? Face? Yun Luofeng stroked his chin with his fingers and asked with a faint smile, do you still have face? The corner of Tian Yue's mouth twitched. After all, what Yun Luofeng said was the truth. He had lost all his face in front of this girl. Lord Tian Yue, under everyone's shocked gazes, an elder said in a trembling voice, Is what you just said true? Yun Luofeng, is he really your master? Tian Yue frowned impatiently. He turned to look at the elder and snorted. Do you think I'm joking? No. I wouldn't dare. In the entire Doctors' Association, Tian Yue's status was the most special. How could he dare to question him? However, when they thought of their actions just now, they wanted to find a hole to hide in. If they had accepted Yun Luofeng as their disciple, what would Tian Yue become? No one dared to imagine such an outcome. Who was the one who said he wanted to accept my master as his disciple? Tian Yue raised his chin arrogantly as he looked at the crowd in the plaza with a fierce gaze and shouted coldly, Get out here immediately. Swoosh. In that instant, everyone's gazes turned towards Luo Fu. The meaning in their eyes was obvious. Gulp. Luo Fu swallowed his saliva and took a few steps back. When he met Tian Yue's gaze, his heart trembled. Lord Tian Yue, I was just joking. After saying this, he glared at Lin Yating, who was standing beside him, dumbfounded. This girl didn't tell him that Yun Luofeng was related to Tian Yue. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to accept her as his disciple even if he had 100 gut. However, this time, Lin Yating was wronged. She didn't know about the relationship between the two. Naturally, He didn't know that Tianya would acknowledge Yun Luofeng as his master. In the face of Luo Fu's reproachful gaze, Lin Yating clenched her fists tightly and lowered her head. A cold glint flashed across her beautiful eyes. Yun Luofeng, the humiliation you gave me today, I will definitely repay it 100-fold in the future. Are you joking? Tianya sneered and said mockingly, then I'll kill you, then go to your grave and tell you that this is just a joke. What do you think? Luo Fu's expression changed. Lord World's Edge, although our leader respects you a lot, he is not a match for you. However, I am still a member of the Doctors' Association. Aren't you being too rude? Haha. Tianya laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with anger. You're threatening me with the Doctors' Association? Good. Then I'll ask that brat Li Chuan to come out right now. Li Chuan was the president of the Doctors' Association. When everyone heard Tianya's impolite words, they couldn't help but look at each other with shock in their eyes. They knew that their president respected Tianya very much. But now, World's Edge was so fierce that he told their guild leader to scram. Was there a reason they didn't know? Chapter 639. Tianya. Just as everyone was hesitating, a helpless voice rang out from the void. Then, they saw an old man in a navy blue robe walk out. This old man was over 50 years old. His face was rosy and there were very few wrinkles on his face. If not for his white hair, it would be difficult to tell his true age. Greetings, President. Everyone in the plaza knelt down when they saw the old man appear out of nowhere. Only Tianya and Yun Luofeng remained in their original positions. Lin Yating felt even more indignant. She felt as if a hand was squeezing her heart, almost suffocating her. Why did she have to kneel while Yun Luofeng could stand? One day, she would climb to the top of everyone's head and let them look up to her. Mpich, you finally dare to show yourself. Tianya scoffed and said sarcastically, is this how you've been ruling the Doctors' Association all these years? First, you indiscriminately protected the medical city. Then, you made the geniuses who came to participate in the conference suffer. It's a miracle that the Doctors' Association hasn't been crippled in your hand. Tianya's words were very blunt. His voice was sharp, and each word struck at the heart. Li Chuan's breathing stopped, but he couldn't retort because Tianya was speaking the truth. Sir Tianya, we respect your medical skills and listen to you because of the president. However, this doesn't mean that you can insult our president. Luo Fu's eyes lit up and he stood up. He gritted his teeth and spoke word by word. Even if Tianya's medical skills were great and he was powerful, he couldn't be so rude in front of the president of the Doctors' Association. Even if the president respected him, he still had to be polite. How could Luo Fu, who had finally found an opportunity, give it up so easily? If the Doctors' Association and Tianya fell out, he would have the chance to kill all of them. Luo Fu, how dare you? Li Chuan's expression changed. He released his aura and threw a punch at Luo Fu. Fart. Luo Fu's body flew a few meters away and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He raised his head and looked at Li Chuan in shock. He trembled and said, President, you, Luo Fu, do you know who is standing in front of you? How dare you say such words? Li Chuan flicked his sleeves and said with a cold expression, even if Tianya had beaten me up, it would be justified, not to mention Tianya had only scolded me. Luo Fu's eyes widened in shock, his face full of shock. What did the guild leader mean? What did he mean by Tianya beating him up was something he deserved? From start to finish, Yun Luofeng had her arms crossed, lazily leaning against the tree behind her. When she heard Li Chuan's words, she subconsciously glanced at Tianya. Her pitch-black eyes seemed to be able to see through everything. Originally, I didn't want to say this. Hiding it from everyone was also Tianya's wish. Li Chuan sneered, but now, because of your rudeness towards Tianya, I have no choice but to say it. Back then, if not for World's Edge, the Physician Association wouldn't have existed. Nor would I have the status I have today. Luo Fu gradually felt uneasy in his heart. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but when he saw Li Chuan's cold gaze, he was so scared that he couldn't say a word. Li Chuan took a deep breath and said, Tianya and I have known each other since we were young. Back then, I didn't know anything about medicine, and I was seriously ill. In order to treat my illness, Tianya started to teach me medicine. All of my medical skills were learned from Tianya. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to take me as a disciple, I would have called him master. So, do you think that he deserved to scold me? Chapter 640. Luo Fu finally could not support his body any longer and fell to the ground. His pale face had turned into despair and his heart was dead. Master. Lin Yating hurried forward and helped Luo Fu up. A fierce look flashed across her eyes as she lowered her head and spoke in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Master, if you bear all the blame, I have a way to save you. Luo Fu was stunned. He lifted his head to look at his disciple. At this moment, he felt as if he was meeting her for the first time. You. What do you want? Believe me, I can only save you if I escape punishment. Hearing Lin Yating's deliberately lowered voice, Luo Fu laughed bitterly. He knew that this was the only way. If he let Lin Yating and him go to jail together, the two of them could only wait for death. He. Luo Fu laughed bitterly and stood up from the ground. His old eyes stared at Li Chuan in the sky and sighed, Lord President, I know that I have committed an unforgivable mistake this time. I have never thought of escaping from all my crimes. I accept my punishment. He gritted his teeth and continued, but my disciple is innocent. She doesn't know anything. President, please forgive her. Hearing this, Lan Hong stared at him coldly. Elder Luo Fu, she had made a bet with Miss Yun at that time. If Miss Yun was able to save these patients within an hour, she would hand over the medicine city to Miss Yun. However, she actually went back on her word just now. How are you going to give us an explanation for this? Luo Fu's heart sank. I was the one who incited this. I told Yating before that regardless of whether Yun Luofeng succeeded or not, she could not comply with her conditions. Yating was against my decision, but I am her master so she could only listen to my orders. Yating is a good girl, please forgive her, President. This. Li Chuan turned to Tianya hesitantly. Tianya, what do you think we should do? Tianya frowned slightly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent, but just as he was about to make his decision, Yun Luofeng suddenly stretched out his hand and stopped him. Girl! Tianya looked at Yun Luofeng in surprise. With Yun Luofeng's personality, he would never let Lin Yating go. Why was she stopping him now? Second uncle isn't here yet. Her meaning was very obvious. If Yun Qingya did not come, then the people of the medical city could not be touched. Perhaps Yun Luofeng was afraid that Tianya didn't understand her meaning, so she continued to repeat, second uncle wants to take revenge personally, especially those who hurt him back then. Let Lin Yating off. How was this possible? She would only use the blood of the people of the medical city to pacify the pain Yun Qingya had suffered all these years. Sigh, Tianya sighed, since you've made this decision, then let these people run wild for a few more days. When your second uncle arrives, it will be the time of their death. Yun Luofeng raised the corner of his lips. Tianya, when the time comes, send someone to keep an eye on the people from the medical city. I don't want them to disappear before second uncle arrives. All right, I will do as you say. Tianya smiled and turned his gaze towards Li Chuan. Since Luo Fu is willing to bear all the responsibility, then take him away. Let the people from the criminal division decide the guilt. In addition, I don't believe that Lin Yating is innocent, so I want you to restrict the freedom of everyone in the medical city. Also, torture Luo Fu and make him confess his accomplice. Chapter 641. A sense of terror appeared in Luo Fu's eyes. She quickly grabbed Lin Yating's hand and exclaimed in a trembling voice, Yating, I won't be able to hold on for much longer. You must save me. I will. Lin Yating held Luo Fu's hand and slowly straightened her body. Her gaze slowly turned towards Yun Luofeng and she said softly, Yun Luofeng, you've won this time. I hope that you can continue to win against me. She then turned around and left without looking back. Only her hands, which were placed by her thighs, were clenched tightly. Yun girl, Elder Rong finally recovered from his shock. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. When I first met you, I had thought that based on your medical skills, you would certainly be godly Dr. Tian Yai's disciple. I never thought that I would be wrong. You're actually his master. This news was too shocking. It was so shocking that he nearly lost his ability to think. Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders. I didn't admit it. Hearing this, Tian Yai's solemn expression instantly turned into one of grievance. He exclaimed resentfully, then when will you admit me? I don't accept a disciple at your age, but I've promised Xiao Bai that I will guide you in medical skills. When will you be free? Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a small smile. His jet-black eyes shone with a bright light. Tian Yai's heart was filled with excitement and he nearly hugged Yun Luofeng. Fortunately, Yun Luofeng had dodged quickly and managed to avoid his bear hug. I'm free anytime. Tian Yai was so excited that he could not control himself. His entire elderly face was flushed red. Shall we begin now? At this moment, the little old man was rubbing his palms. His smile was as vulgar as it could be. It was completely different from his sage-like demeanor. The crowd was dumbfounded and could not believe that this vulgar old man was their highly respected godly Dr. Tian Yai. Could it be that someone had accidentally switched him out? Little girl, Elder Rong chuckled, when you're guiding godly Dr. Tian Yai, can I listen in? Yun Luofeng thought for a moment and nodded, sure, as long as you don't disturb me. Elder Rong's heart leaped and he quickly agreed. Little Yun, don't worry. I won't make a single sound. After hearing their voices, all the elders of the Doctors' Association started to get restless. Miss Yun, can we also go and listen? I promise we won't disturb you. The elders' eyes were filled with anticipation as they quietly looked at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin and turned to Lan Hong. That year, my second uncle and the medical city had a dispute. How many people naturally stood on the side of the medical city? Lan Hong was stunned for a moment. He thought for a moment and said, there was a dispute in the past at the Doctors' Association. Half of the people think that the medical city is not wrong, the one who is wrong is Yun Qingya, and the other half remain silent. At that time, other than Lan Hong who had objected to the Doctors' Association's decision, the others either stood on the Medicine City's side or maintained their silence. Therefore, after hearing his words, Yun Luofeng raised the corner of his lips and said, some of you think that my second uncle is in the wrong, and the others remain silent about what happened to my second uncle. Why do you think I should forgive your actions and help you improve your medical skills? She could understand those who remained silent, but she could not accept that it was because of their silence that second uncle had suffered so many years of harm. Chapter 642. The crowd lowered their heads in annoyance and cursed the people of the Medicine City a few hundred times in their heart. If it had not been for these people, why would Yun Luofeng have rejected them? Little Yun, Elder Rong glanced at Lan Hong and said, Lan Hong was the only one who had objected to the Doctors' Association's actions that year. I wonder if he could attend the hearing? Yun Luofeng gently nodded, yes. She had always been able to distinguish between kindness and hatred. Even though Lan Hong had been unable to go against the majority's decision, his heart was still fair and just. Based on this point alone, she would not reject Lan Hong's participation. The elders stared at Lan Hong enviously as if they wanted to replace him. If they had known that this would happen, they would not have sided with the Medicine City. Otherwise, they would not have ended up like this. Li Chuan had wanted to ask Yun Luofeng to allow him to attend the hearing as well. However, when he saw the miserable looks on the faces of the other elders who had been rejected, he swallowed his words. After all, he was the one who had stood up to protect the Medicine City. What right does he have to ask Yun Luofeng to teach him medicine? This Medicine City has caused us all to suffer. Li Chuan sighed and spoke hatefully. To the crowd, Yun Luofeng had been able to make Tian Yai acknowledge her as his master. This proves that her medical skills are so powerful that it would anger both men and God. If they could receive her guidance, they would certainly be able to avoid many detours. However, because of the Medicine City, they had missed a great opportunity. Let's go, we'll settle the score with the Medicine City. The elders agreed in unison and hurriedly walked towards the guest room. At this moment, they had already vented their anger from being rejected on the people of the Medicine City. Li Chuan also wanted to join in, but when he thought of his own status, he could only suppress the impulse in his heart. In the luxurious guest room, Lin Ji paced back and forth impatiently. His eyes glanced out of the door from time to time, and there was a sense of urgency in his eyes. If Lin Yating had not been afraid that he would stir up trouble again, she would not have stopped him from going to watch the assessment. Hence, he could only wait quietly in his room for news. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside, and the door was pushed open. When he saw the woman who had pushed the door open, his face lit up with joy, and he asked, "Yating, did you succeed? That woman, Yun Luofeng, has failed?" Ha ha ha. As long as he thought of the young girl losing face in front of everyone, he felt an indescribable joy in his heart. However, Lin Yating's expression was very ugly, and there was not the slightest bit of joy after her scheme succeeded. After seeing her face, Lin Ji's heart skipped a beat. "Yating, what happened?" "Father," Lin Yating bit her lip gently, a complicated look in her eyes. "I've failed." Yun Luofeng could tell at a glance that the person was pretending to be sick. He even exposed him on the spot. "What?" Lin Ji staggered and fell heavily to the ground. His face was pale as he murmured, "This is impossible. Your plan is flawless. How could it fail?" Lin Yating's gaze became even more complicated. "Not only that, I also made a bet with Yun Luofeng. If she can cure all the patients in half an incense stick's time, then she wins. If not, then she loses. Within half an incense stick's time?" Even if Yun Luofeng's talent was any greater, it was impossible for him to accomplish this. Half an incense stick's time is probably only enough for her to take his pulse and make a diagnosis. If someone had said that Yun Luofeng had cured all the patients on her own, perhaps he would have believed it. However, with the addition of half an incense stick's time, Lin Ji would never believe that she had done it on purpose. Chapter 643. I hope so too. Lin Yating's eyes darkened as she said, "Unfortunately, she did it. Moreover, I used the medical city as a wager and lost it." Lin Ji's body shook, and he said embarrassedly, "Yating, you're joking with me, right? Even Tian Ya couldn't do it in half an incense's time. Could it be that she has the ability to rule the world?" Lin Yating lowered her eyes slightly, concealing the ruthlessness in her eyes. Tian Ya naturally can't do it, because Tian Ya is her disciple. Lin Ji's pupils gradually dilated, and his gaze changed from the initial shock to fear. There were only a few words echoing in his mind. Tian Ya was Yun Luofeng's disciple. That genius doctor whose name shook the continent, Tian Ya, was Yun Luofeng's disciple. This was even more shocking than Tian Ya taking in Yun Luofeng. Lin Ji climbed up from the ground and clenched his fists tightly. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he raised his head and stared fixedly at Lin Yating. At this moment, even though the woman in front of him looked a little pale, she did not lose her usual elegance and indifference, as if she had a card up her sleeve. "Yating, you must have a way, right?" A glimmer of hope appeared in Lin Ji's eyes. "Ever since you were young, you've always been more composed and clear-headed than the average person. I know that you definitely have a way to save me." Lin Yating sighed. Over the years, there were many times when she wanted to give up on the medical city. However, in the end, she was unable to overcome the hurdle in her heart. This medicine city was the place that had raised her. Lin Ji was her godfather. If she were to ignore the medical city, wouldn't she be an ungrateful wretch? She could not bear such a bad reputation. "In order to save me, my master has already separated me from this matter. Logically speaking, as long as I know my place now, I would be able to live a peaceful life. However, I simply cannot ignore your medicine city. In other words, I could have abandoned all of you, but now I'm doing everything I can to save you. I'm afraid that your medicine city will never be able to repay such a great kindness." Yating, Lin Ji's eyes lit up. "I understand. I understand everything that you've done for the medical city. I just want to know, what method do you have to save the medical city?" Lin Yating was silent for a moment. In 2 days, the Ghost Emperor will arrive. The Ghost Emperor? Yating, what do you want to do? Lin Ji looked at Lin Yating in shock. The Ghost Emperor is very strong. Even the president is not a match for him. I heard about this from Master. Lin Yating narrowed her eyes as a cold light flashed across them. And this time, I'm the referee because Master wants me to get close to the Ghost Emperor. After all, if I host this meeting, I will have the chance. Lin Ji seemed to have thought of what Lin Yating wanted to do, and his eyes were a little surprised. Yating, you mean, originally, I wanted to let nature take its course. If the Ghost Emperor doesn't like me, it doesn't matter, Lin Yating interrupted Lin Ji's words. She looked out the window and suddenly flashed with a determined light, but this time, I can only give it my all. Lin Ji seemed to understand what Lin Yating wanted to do and his eyes were filled with surprise. Yating, you mean, Yating, Lin Ji's complexion finally turned for the better, but he still had some worries in his heart. Your master has already fallen. I'm afraid that the person hosting the meeting this time will be someone else. If that's the case, how are you going to approach the Ghost Emperor? Lin Yating smiled indifferently. I have my own ways. You only need to remember one thing. No matter what Yun Luofeng does to you over the next few days, you must endure. After a few days, I will avenge you. Chapter 644. Alright, a sharp light flashed in Lin Ji's eyes. I'll let that slut Yun Luofeng run wild for a few more days. Once the Ghost Emperor becomes my son-in-law, I'll make her understand the consequences of offending me. Now, every time he thought about the famous Ghost Emperor becoming his son-in-law, his heart would fill with uncontrollable excitement. He could almost see the scene of the Ghost Emperor and Lin Yating getting married. Lin Ji, get your ass out here. Boom. Suddenly, the door was kicked open by a foot. Immediately after, several elders rushed in from the outside and surrounded the entire room in an instant. Lin Ji was shocked by these people and asked in a trembling voice, You. What do you want? What do we want? The leading elder smiled evilly. Of course we want to fuck you and your son. As soon as he finished speaking, the elder waved his hand. In that instant, a man dressed in embroidered robes was thrown out from behind the crowd and landed on the ground with a loud thud. Son. When he saw the bruises all over the man, Lin Ji turned pale with fright. He quickly stepped forward and helped the man up. Son, are you all right? Father. Lin Hao grimaced in pain. What on earth happened? Why did the elders of the Doctors' Association attack the Medicine City? How it's all right. Father is here, nothing will happen. Lin Ji quickly shielded his son as he glared angrily at the people in front of him. When have I, Lin Ji, ever offended all of you to the point that you would be so cruel to my son? Me. The leading elder scoffed coldly. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have offended Miss Yun and she wouldn't have taught us medicine. Back then, you were the one who sought death, but you had to drag the entire Doctors' Association into this. Now, we have nowhere to vent our anger, so we can only come to you. Then, he gritted his teeth and said, Let's go and fuck them up. The elders had long been unable to restrain their violent hearts, and powerful spiritual energy struck Lin Ji's body one after another. However, because Lin Ji had protected Lin Hao in his arms the entire time, Lin Hao did not suffer any attacks. Lin Yating looked at the father and son pair. She was afraid that she would provoke an undeserved calamity, so she silently retreated. Forget it, I'll let them off for now. After an unknown period of time, one of the elders stopped and said helplessly, Actually, we were also at fault for what happened back then. If we hadn't helped the medical city indiscriminately, we wouldn't have ended up like this. That's right. We are indeed at fault. I really envy that old fellow Lan Hong. Back then, he was more reasonable, so he could go and listen. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the first place? The hearts of the various elders were filled with regret. After they understood the situation, they did not make things difficult for the people of the Medicine City. Instead, they walked out on their own. Perhaps they needed to find a place to reflect on their actions over the years. How they're finally gone. Lin Ji breathed a sigh of relief after everyone had left. Were you injured just now? Father, Is the Miss Yoon they're talking about someone from the Yoon family? Lin Hao clenched his fists tightly. Because Lin Ji was afraid that mentioning the Yoon family would provoke Lin Hao, he had never mentioned the Yoon family in front of Lin Hao over the past year. Even after coming to the Doctors Association, he didn't tell Lin Hao that Yoon Luofeng would be attending the conference. Now, hearing Lin Hao's question, he became silent. Chapter 645. Father, tell me, is it those bastards from the Yoon family? The veins on Lin Hao's forehead bulged as he clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. Lin Ji sighed helplessly. Hao, it's the Yoon family's Yoon Luofeng. His here, Yoon Luofeng? That dog Yoon Qingya's niece. Lin Hao flew into a rage and said angrily, Father, why did the bastards from the Yoon family come to a place like the Doctors Association? What qualifications do those lowly things have to step into such a noble territory? Go and kill Yoon Luofeng right now. Looking at Lin Hao's twisted face, the corner of Lin Ji's lips curled up into a bitter smile. I'm afraid we won't be able to kill Yoon Luofeng right now. Why? Why can't I kill that bastard? I don't care. I want you to kill her and the people from the Yoon family. I want everyone in the Yoon family to die. That dog Yoon Qingya had defeated him in front of everyone's eyes. How could he endure such humiliation? If Yoon Qingya wasn't already dead, he would have definitely sent the experts of the medical city to annihilate the Yoon family. Unfortunately, in order to prevent Lin Hao from being provoked, Lin Ji had already instructed the people of the medical city not to let any news of Yoon Qingya reach his ears. Thus, even now, Lin Ji still did not know that Yoon Qingya was still alive. Hao, calm down. Lin Ji's eyes flickered a few times. Yoon Luofeng is a young genius that was invited by the Doctors' Conference this time. The Doctors' Conference has a rule that no matter what grudges there are, no one is allowed to fight during the conference. In a few days, Father will help you kill him to vent your anger. Lin Ji did not dare to tell Lin Hao about the relationship between Yoon Luofeng and Tian Ya. Otherwise, Lin Hao would definitely be provoked. In any case, the Ghost Emperor would be his son-in-law. With the Ghost Emperor as his son-in-law, why would he need to be afraid of Yoon Luofeng? Humph. Lin Hao snorted disdainfully, but his expression improved a little. Young genius? What kind of genius is she? Are the people from the Doctors Association blind to actually invite that kind of dog to participate in the conference? Yes, yes, yes. Lin Ji hurriedly echoed Lin Hao with a face full of doting. The Doctors Association is indeed blind to invite her to participate in the conference. How can that woman Yoon Luofeng compare to you, Hao? Hao, you are the true genius. Oh right, Dad, why did those association elders beat us up? Are they related to Yoon Luofeng? Lin Hao touched his aching cheek and sucked in a breath of cold air. Lin Ji was startled for a moment and unconsciously frowned. He was thinking about what kind of excuse he could use to brush off Lin Hao. Father, do you think that Yoon Luofeng used her beauty to confuse those elders to beat us up? If the people from the doctors are confused by her, then we will be. Before this, Lin Ji had pasted the portraits of all the members of the Yoon family in his room so that he could humiliate them. Yoon, and Hao, one, he, Luo, Yoon, in, and Chen Hao, in, and, Lun Yoon, he, Hao, Emperor, in, Lin, Yoon. Hao, in, Hao, Lin, Yoon, in Lin, Ghost Emperor. Lin Hao was stunned for a moment, comparing the Ghost Emperor and the Doctors Association. Who is stronger? This, Lin Ji pondered for a moment. The Ghost Emperor's strength is unfathomable. I don't know what level he has fallen to. However, Yating said that the president of the Doctors Association is not a match for the Ghost Emperor. Chapter 646. The president of the Doctors Association was no match for the Ghost Emperor? Lin Ji's eyes lit up. Father, will the Ghost Emperor really become my brother-in-law? Hao, have you forgotten? Lin Ji smiled lovingly. For the past 20 years, which man has your sister taken a liking to has been able to escape from her clutches? At the end of the day, the Ghost Emperor is only a man. As a man, how could he escape the temptation of beauty? Lin Hao nodded in agreement. That's true. After all, I'm a man. As long as it's a good-looking woman, I want to accept her. The Ghost Emperor and I must have the same thoughts. Unless he's impotent, he would turn a blind eye to a beauty. Furthermore, Father, I have one more request. I want Yun Luofeng's body. Once I've obtained her body, I'll kill her. He seemed to recall that pitilessly beautiful face which was like that of a celestial being. He licked his lips vulgarly and narrowed his eyes with a lascivious light. How a woman like Yun Luofeng will sully you. However, as long as you like her, I can make her your concubine. Lin Ji's love for Lin Hao was shown on his face. When he faced Lin Hao, his face always carried a warm smile. It goes without saying that the reason why Lin Hao had become such a hedonistic playboy was closely related to his love for him. Father, Lin Hao curled the corners of his lips sinisterly. A woman like that is only fit to serve me for one night. Even if she cries and begs for me to sleep with her, I won't give her a second night. A woman who isn't even a virgin, I think she's too dirty. He had already decided that Yun Luofeng must have used her beauty to bewitch the elders. That was why the elders had come here to avenge her. Since that was the case, she must have had a physical relationship with the elders. How could such a dirty woman have the right to become his concubine? At most, he would think that he had visited a brothel to visit a prostitute. He would never visit the same prostitute a second time. At this moment, Qing Yang came to a halt on the rugged mountain path. She leaned her body against the tree behind her, feeling somewhat exhausted. She gently closed her eyes. Yang, are you tired? Yi Ling turned to look at Qing Yang and a gentle smile appeared on his cold features. Qing Yang opened her eyes and shook her head. I'm fine. Let's continue. Not too long ago, they had received the news that the city governor's residence in the medical city had been burnt down. It was said that the person who burned down the city lord's mansion was their young miss. If the young miss had returned, then she would surely head to the Doctors' Association to participate in the meeting. Thus, she and Yi Leng had hurriedly led some people over for the sake of lending her a hand. All right. Yi Ling lovingly rubbed Qing Yang's head, a warm smile on her lips. If you're tired, we can rest. After all, you haven't stopped to rest for the past few days in order to hurry on with our journey. Didn't you guys also not rest? Qing Yang rolled her eyes. We are men. You are just a woman. I'm the leader of the Flame Corps, not a weak woman. Qing Yang's eyes shone with a determined light. I won't rest until I see the young lady. The people from the medical city were also in the Doctors' Association. That was why she was in such a hurry, afraid that Yun Luofeng would be in danger. Ah, Yi Ling sighed. If you're tired, I don't mind carrying you. Chapter 647. No need. Qing Yang propped herself up. Yi Ling, if I'm so weak that I need you to carry me, how would I have the right to fight for you? It's getting late, let's continue. As she spoke, she gripped her sword tightly and planned to continue walking. However, at that moment, a sneer suddenly rang out, causing everyone to be on guard. Yun family? I didn't think we'd be so lucky to meet someone from the Yun family on our way. Since that's the case, I'll kill you first, then go to the Yun family and cause trouble for Elder Yun. As soon as she finished speaking, countless figures descended from the sky and surrounded everyone. The leader of the group was a middle-aged man. This man was dressed lavishly, but his eyes were like a venomous snake, making everyone uncomfortable. Yi Ling, Flowing Gold Country's third prince, Yun Luofeng's subordinate, deputy commander of the Iron Legion. Qing Yang, Yun Luofeng's maidservant, commander of the Flame Legion. Looks like I've met the right person. The middle-aged man seemed to be talking to himself as his lips curled into a mocking smile. Who are you? After sensing the middle-aged man's powerful aura, Yi Ling instinctively shielded Qing Yang behind her and stared at him coldly. I'm the subordinate of Elder Luo Fu of the Doctors' Association. The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes. I'm under orders to go to the Yun family and capture Elder Yun. Previously, after Yun Luofeng had rejected Lin Yating, she had sent people to the Yun family. This was her last layer of protection. If Yun Luofeng still refused to submit to her, she would use the Yun family's lives to threaten him. She had done this many times. Unfortunately, the middle-aged man did not know about the incident at the Doctors' Association, nor did he know that Lin Yating could not even protect herself after Luo Fu stepped down. Otherwise, he would not have dared to cause trouble for the Yun family. Qing Yang, be careful. Yi Ling's expression darkened. This middle-aged man is an intermediate earth spiritualist. Everyone else is a high spiritualist. Right now, among the Yun family's troops, he was the only one who had broken through to a low-level earth spiritualist. The strongest among the rest was only a high spiritualist. But with his own strength, he could not fight against these people. Fortunately, the Yun family had Elder Ning and the pavilion master of the medical pavilion as witnesses. An earth spiritualist would not be able to do anything to the Yun family. After all, with regards to the Yun family's news, Lin Yating was still stuck at the time when Yun Luofeng was in the Yun family. She did not have the slightest idea that the current Yun family had two great experts overseeing it. But even if she knew, there was nothing she could do, because the most powerful person she could use in the Doctors' Association was an earth spirit. This was also why Elder Rong had not been worried after hearing Lin Yating's threat. Instead, he had been comforting Yun Luofeng. Because he understood that the experts that Lin Yating sent out would not be able to do anything to the Yun family. These people indeed couldn't do anything to the Yun family, but to the Iron Steel Legion that had left the Yun family, it was not a small threat. Go. Kill everyone from the Yun family. A gloomy look flashed across the middle-aged man's face as he coldly ordered, I want them to understand the consequences of going against Yating. In an instant, the people behind him pulled out their weapons and quickly surrounded the army. Yi Ling, let's fight together. Qing Yang quickly drew her weapon and stood back to back with Yi Ling. Her clear eyes were filled with determination. Even if I, Qing Yang, die, I will not lower my head to the Doctors' Association. Chapter 648. The other members of the army drew their weapons one after another and joined the battle. The sounds of battle resounded throughout the mountain path, and fresh blood flowed all over the ground. The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes, and his gaze gradually shifted towards Yi Ling. After that, his body transformed into a swift and fierce sword that shot towards Yi Ling. He'd noticed a long time ago that Yi Ling was the most powerful person in this group. Since that was the case, then he would kill him first. Yi Ling, watch out. When Qing Yang saw that the middle-aged man was about to charge towards Yi Ling, she somehow gained a speed that left no time for her to cover her ears as she charged towards the middle-aged man. Yang Yi Ling roared anxiously. With a bang, the sword in his hand chopped off the head of the enemy in front of him, and he hurriedly stretched out his hand to grab Qing Yang. However, his fingers only managed to tug at Qing Yang's sleeve, and he managed to pull it off. After that, he could only watch helplessly as Qing Yang stretched out her arms and stood in front of the middle-aged man with a resolute expression on her face. If you want to die for him, I'll fulfill your wish. The middle-aged man laughed coldly, and he raised the long sword in his hand high and slashed it towards Qing Yang's head. Yi Ling was completely enraged. A terrifying pressure emanated from his body, and he instantly dealt with the row of people in front of him. Subsequently, he flew swiftly towards Qing Yang with the intention of stopping the middle-aged man's attack. Swoosh! Suddenly, a flying knife flew towards him from behind, and it tore through the sky, leaving a long mark behind. However, Yi Ling acted as if he hadn't seen the flying knife, and he didn't even try to dodge it. Instead, he pulled Qing Yang, who was blocking the middle-aged man. However, the flying knife didn't slash Yi Ling's body. Instead, it bypassed him as if it had eyes of its own, and it sliced through the middle-aged man's throat with a slash. The middle-aged man's body stiffened, and the long sword slipped out of his hand. He didn't even know what had happened before his body fell backwards. He died with everlasting regret. Yang At the instant that the long sword fell to the ground, Yi Ling had already pulled Qing Yang into his arms. His voice was trembling, and it was filled with obvious terror and terror. Why did you do that? Qing Yang smiled. Because you're my husband, and I don't want to see you die. So, I'd rather die first. Qing Yang, why are you so selfish? Yi Ling tightly pressed on Qing Yang's shoulder and couldn't help but roar, what should I do if anything happens to you in order to save me? I won't allow you to do this again. Qing Yang lowered her eyes and a smile appeared on her delicate face. Perhaps next time, she would be just as selfish, because she couldn't let Yi Ling fall before her. Therefore, she would rather be the one to fall first. By the way, Qing Yang, we should first thank you for saving our lives. Yi Ling turned his head. Before he could say the last word, it was stuck in his throat. His eyes widened bit by bit, excitement written all over his face. Leader. Leader, in the void, a green robe fluttered in the wind. The man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His features were clear and handsome. He was like a proud green lotus that bloomed alone. Second Master, Qing Yang was so excited that she almost shed tears. Second Master, you're finally back. We've been waiting for you for more than a year. Furthermore, the young miss has gone to the Doctors' Association. Just as she finished speaking, the graceful figure in the sky quickly disappeared. The direction he was heading towards was surprisingly the Doctors' Association. Chapter 649. Ever since Luo Fu had been imprisoned, he finally understood what it meant to be better off dead than alive. Furthermore, because of his and Lin Yating's actions, the host of the meeting was chosen to be the disciple of another elder, Hu Po. At this moment, Hu Po, who was cultivating, was disturbed by a series of footsteps. He frowned slightly and turned to look at the woman who had pushed the door open. Lin Yating, what are you doing here? Hu Po's face gradually showed signs of impatience as he asked coldly. Lin Yating did not think much of it. She smiled elegantly and slowly walked through the door. I heard that you're going to welcome the Ghost Emperor outside the city tomorrow? That's right. Hu Po frowned slightly. But what does this have to do with you? Don't forget that you no longer have any status in the Doctors' Association. Lin Yating's eyes flickered and she smiled gently. Hu Po, I'm here to ask you for a favor. One of my junior sisters admires the Ghost Emperor very much. So, I want her to go with you to meet the Ghost Emperor tomorrow. Lin Yating, forgive me for not being able to help you. After all, if I help you and Master finds out, he will definitely not forgive you. Hu Po coldly rejected Lin Yating. Lin Yating was not discouraged and continued to smile. Hu Po, I heard that Elder Ding Ling has been favoring Shen Feng more recently. I have a way to help you. What way? Hu Po's heart sank slightly as he asked. I have a 500-year-old ice ginseng with me. If you give this ice ginseng to Elder Ding Ling, he will definitely favor and trust you in the future. As for me, I only want you to do me a small favor. Hu Po fell silent. Lin Yating's words were too tempting and he could not reject her as decisively as before. Are you sure that you only want me to help you with this small favor? Hu Po's words were filled with doubt. He knew Lin Yating's character all too well. This woman was very cunning and if one was not careful, one would fall into her trap. I swear that I will only let my junior sister take a look at the Ghost Emperor. Based on my junior sister's abilities, she does not have the right to attend the meeting. I guarantee that she will not do anything out of line. Don't worry. Lin Yating's lips curled into a smile as she vowed. Hu Po gritted his teeth. All right. I'll believe you this once. Senior brother Hu Po, I thank you on behalf of my junior sister. Lin Yating's smile widened, but the moment she lowered her eyes, a cold glint flashed across her eyes. Yun Luofeng, do you think that I won't have a chance to meet the Ghost Emperor just because the Doctors' Association is keeping a close eye on me? You're wrong. As long as I want to leave this place, there are thousands of ways. With that in mind, Lin Yating walked out of the room and closed the door for Hu Po. In a simple yet elegant room, the incense burner exuded an intoxicating smell. Yun Luofeng lazily sat on the wooden chair. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Milk Tea, who had squeezed in through the crack of the door. What did Lin Yating do? Ji, Milk Tea called out twice and said, Master, I just went to Lin Yating's room and found that she was in disguise. Disguise? Yun Luofeng was startled and asked, why did she disguise herself? Could it be that she wants to escape? No. According to Lin Yating's character, she would not easily leave the Doctors' Association. After all, the Doctors' Association had not punished her yet, so how could she be willing to leave? I'm not sure. Milk Tea raised her big bright eyes. After she disguised herself, she removed her makeup and left the room. Because I wanted to report this to Master, I did not continue to follow her. Chapter 650. Lin Yating would never have guessed that Yun Luofeng had allowed her to move freely in the Doctors' Association because he had already sent an unremarkable little hamster to keep an eye on her. However, Milk Tea was in a hurry to report to Yun Luofeng and did not hear the conversation between Lin Yating and Hu Po. Yun Luofeng's fingers lightly tapped on the table as an evil light flashed across his eyes. Continue to follow Lin Yating. If she tries to sneak away, knock her out and bring her back. Before second uncle arrives, no one in the medical city can be missing. Yes, Master. Milk Tea obediently agreed. With a swoosh, she squeezed through the narrow gap in the door once again. It's already been 2 days. Yun Xiao will probably arrive tomorrow. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile. A few days ago, Yun Luofeng had saved all the patients in half an incense stick's time. Hence, she was the rightful leader. As there were still other rankings to be determined, the other genius doctors had to compete again. Today was the last day of the test. Tomorrow was the real grand assembly. Master, Lin Ruobai, who was standing quietly in front of Yun Luofeng, pursed her lips. We've already been at the Doctors' Association for a few days. Why don't you accompany me to go shopping? Not interested. Yun Luofeng raised his brows. Yun Xiao will be here tomorrow. I need to conserve my energy. Master, why do you need to conserve your energy when Grandmaster is coming? To tease him. The corner of Lin Ruobai's mouth twitched. In front of her domineering master, Grandmaster would always be suppressed. She could already imagine how intense the two of them would be tomorrow. It would be like dry wood meeting a raging fire. Thinking of this, Lin Ruobai did not continue to disturb Yun Luofeng. She silently retreated. The next day, dawn. Early in the morning, countless people dressed in the robes of the Doctors' Association had gathered at the city gate. This caused the residents in the city to look at each other in dismay. They did not know who had arrived to cause such a commotion. While everyone was discussing, a black figure suddenly appeared in the sky above the city gate in the blink of an eye. At this moment, a phrase appeared in everyone's mind. Unparalleled in the world, a sovereign descending upon the world. The man stood quietly in midair. His cold, black eyes, which seemed to look down on all living things, swept across the crowd below him. It made them feel the urge to kneel down and submit to him. His face was covered by a mask, and it was impossible to see the expression under the mask. However, that pair of thin lips had a cold arc, as if in this man's eyes, there was no room for the existence of anyone. Milk Tea, who was hiding in the crowd, subconsciously glanced at Lin Yating, who was in disguise. Anger flashed through her big bright eyes. Could it be that this woman snuck out of the Doctors' Association for the sake of her master's man? In particular, there was a flash of infatuation in her eyes, which made the anger in Milk Tea's heart burn even more. At this moment, Lin Yating was staring infatuatedly at the man in the sky. Even though she could not see his face under the mask, it did not stop her from being infatuated with him. This man, with just his aura, had already conquered him. It also made her understand what she wanted in this life. It was a good thing that Lin Yating was unable to see Yun Xiao's face. Otherwise, she would have fallen even deeper and would have been unable to extricate herself. Chapter 651. The man slowly walked down from the sky. His tall figure shrouded the ground and his powerful aura made one's heart tremble as if there was a deep sense of oppression. Lin Yating hurriedly lowered her head, not daring to look at this man. Otherwise, she would feel that her neck would be crushed by his powerful aura at any time. The others felt the same way as they lowered their heads tightly, not even having the strength to lift their heads. Ghost Emperor, you're here? Hu Po suppressed the excitement in his heart and quickly walked to Yun Xiao. I've been waiting for you on Master's orders. Yun Xiao's gaze was as cold as ever and his black eyes would never have any extra emotions. The corners of his lips under his mask curled into a cold and hard angle as he walked through the city gates. Ghost Emperor. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from the crowd. Lin Yating had already raised her head and looked straight at the man who had walked through the city gates. A glint flashed across her infatuated eyes. I'm Guofulan, a disciple of the Doctors Association. I've heard a lot about you, Ghost Emperor, so I've been waiting here. Under Luo Fu's tutelage, there was indeed a disciple called Guofulan, and Lin Yating had disguised herself as her. When Hu Po heard Lin Yating's words, his expression changed and he hurriedly shouted, Guofulan, what are you trying to do? Can you bear the responsibility if you alarm Lord Ghost Emperor? Lin Yating clenched her fists tightly. She knew that this was her last hope and she must not give up. Lord Ghost Emperor, I've heard my senior sister Lin Yating mention your name. My senior sister Lin Yating is not only unparalleled in beauty, she's also elegant and kind. Now, she's been framed. Please help me, Lord Ghost Emperor. Yun Xiao did not seem to hear the pleas of the woman behind him as he walked through the city gates. Dressed in black, he appeared cold and unfeeling. Lin Yating thought that her words had no allure to the man. She bit her lips and continued, Lord Ghost Emperor, senior sister Yating offended that woman because of you. Because that woman admires you, the kind-hearted senior sister Yating couldn't bear for her to be consigned to eternal damnation, so she persuaded her out of goodwill. Who knew that it would lead to her crazy revenge? This time, Yating has indeed suffered an undeserved calamity. Lord Ghost Emperor, you must help her. Among the crowd, Milk Tea's eyes were filled with contempt as she stared at Lin Yating mockingly. Unparalleled beauty? Elegant and kind? Was Lin Yating praising herself? This was the first time it had heard someone praise itself in such a narcissistic way. Of course, the premise was that Milk Tea knew that the fake face was Lin Yating. If it was someone else who didn't know the truth, they wouldn't feel disgusted by Lin Yating's words. After all, Lin Yating was currently wearing someone else's face. Yun Xiao's figure gradually disappeared from the streets. From the beginning until the end, he had not even spared Lin Yating a glance, as though he had treated her as air and directly ignored her. Guofulan, what are you doing? Hu Po was a little angry and glared fiercely at Guofulan. Lin Yating had told me that you're sensible and would never do anything that would embarrass the medical city. Why would you say such things in front of the Ghost Emperor? Lin Yating sneered, I'm only standing up for senior sister Yating. How can that slut, Yun Luofeng, compare to senior sister Yating? Now, this is the only chance to save senior sister Yating and I will never give it up. Hu Po was stunned as he stared at Lin Yating in astonishment. Guofulan, when did your relationship with Lin Yating become so good? First, she came here to beg me to help you because of you. Now, you're risking your life for her. Chapter 652. How would he know that the person standing in front of him was not Guofulan? It was Lin Yating who had already changed her appearance. Hu Po, I want to attend the doctor's conference with you. Lin Yating's eyes darkened. At that time, Yun Luofeng will also appear. I want to take this opportunity to use the Ghost Emperor to get rid of her. No way. Hu Po's expression changed. Return to the Doctors Association immediately. I will not tolerate you anymore. Do you think that you still have a chance to go back on your word? Lin Yating laughed coldly. If you don't bring me to the conference, I will tell your master that you have accepted senior sister Yating's bribe. You, Hu Po angrily pointed at Lin Yating and his body trembled slightly. He regretted it. He regretted accepting Lin Yating's bribe. Otherwise, he would not be in such a passive position now. All right, I will do as you wish. Before Hu Po left, he turned back to look at Lin Yating. However, I feel that you and senior sister Yating are becoming more and more alike. Guofulan's heart suddenly trembled. She thought that she would be exposed, but she saw Hu Po turn around and leave, hurriedly chasing in the direction that Yun Xiao had disappeared in, at the conference hall. Under the vast blue sky, all the elders took out the treasures that they had obtained over the past few years and proudly welcomed the envious gazes of the people around them. The doctors' conference, in layman's terms, was a conference to flaunt one's wealth. Every time before the doctors' conference, people from various forces would search for precious treasures to flaunt in the Doctors' Association. As Yun Luofeng had only sent people to monitor the people from the medical city, he did not restrict their activities in the Doctors' Association. Hence, on the day of the conference, the people from the medical city also went to the conference hall. Lin Hao saw the young lady in white in the crowd at first glance. He could not help but clench his fists as a fierce glint flashed across his eyes. At this moment, the young lady was like a moon in the hearts of the masses. Whether it was the elders or disciples of the Doctors' Association or the people from other forces, they all surrounded her and placed the treasures in their hands in front of her as if they were presenting a treasure. "Miss Yun, I have painstakingly obtained this blood guillotine. If you want it, I can give it to you. However, I have a small request. Can you guide me in my medical skills? As for my 1,000-year dragon turtle grass, I'll give it to Miss Yun. As for my request, it's the same as his. I only need a little guidance from Miss Yun. Such a precious medicinal herb naturally needs to be matched with a powerful physician. Therefore, this medicinal herb is useless in my hands. Why don't I give it to Miss Yun? She can maximize its effects." These people had once treated medicinal ingredients as priceless treasures, not to mention the medicinal ingredients that they had brought to the Doctors' Association to show off. Now, they were fighting to give it to Yun Luofeng, afraid that the young girl would reject their request. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows evilly and instructed Lin Ruobai, "Little Bai, take the medicinal ingredients and note down the names of these doctors. I will be staying in the Doctors' Association for a few more days. If you have any questions, you can ask me." As a doctor, what he lacked the most was precious medicinal ingredients. But now, Yun Luofeng had found a way to obtain medicinal ingredients faster. Then can we use medicinal herbs to exchange for a chance to guide them? The elders of the Doctors' Association held their breaths and looked at Yun Luofeng nervously. Yun Luofeng thought for a moment and then nodded. "If the herbs are rare enough, I can answer a few of your questions." Chapter 653. All the elders were excited. Some of the old men did not wait for their companions to react and ran towards the place where they stored their medicinal ingredients. They wanted to be ahead of everyone else and present their medicinal ingredients to Yun Luofeng. "Father," Lin Hao frowned, "why do all those people want to curry favor with Yun Luofeng?" Lin Ji was stunned and felt a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would not have let Lin Hao come. But in the end, he did not reject his request and brought him to the venue. "This." Lin Ji's eyes flickered a few times and he replied, "That's because of Tian Ya. Yun Luofeng and Tian Ya have an improper relationship. In order to curry favor with Tian Ya, they naturally pestered Yun Luofeng." Lin Hao suddenly understood and looked at Yun Luofeng with disdain. "So that's how it is. This woman is really dirty." Thinking of this, Lin Hao planned to ridicule Yun Luofeng. But at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly appeared and enveloped the entire venue. Yun Luofeng was all too familiar with this aura, so familiar that he could recognize it even if he closed his eyes. At the end of the venue, the man's cold eyes were tightly locked onto the young girl who was surrounded by all the stars. It was as if there was a trace of a shallow smile on his lips, so shallow that it almost disappeared. When their eyes met, a strange feeling spread between the two of them and spread to the surroundings, causing the man's body temperature to lose its previous coldness. The man only looked at her quietly. The young girl's figure was imprinted in his eyes and engraved in his heart. Engraved in his heart and bones, unforgettable for a lifetime. Hu Po and Lin Yating hurried over and saw the man standing silently at the end of the venue. They did not know what had happened, but the man's aura was no longer as oppressive as before. At this moment, Lin Yating suddenly saw Yun Luofeng madly rushing towards Yun Xiao. She was like a wild wolf and Yun Xiao was a delicious dessert in the wolf's mouth. That undisguised emotion made Lin Yating's heart happy and the corners of her lips curled into a mocking smile. "Yun Luofeng, I had thought that you were smarter than others, but I never thought that you would be so stupid. You actually became so impulsive after seeing the Ghost Emperor." With the Ghost Emperor's personality of not liking strangers, her blood might splatter on the spot. As if she could already see Yun Luofeng's miserable appearance as his blood splattered on the spot, the smile on Lin Yating's face grew even wider. Her sinister eyes coldly stared at the white-clothed girl who was rushing towards Yun Xiao. Facing the young girl who was like a hungry wolf pouncing on its prey, not only did Yun Xiao not make a move, she instead opened her arms wide and the corners of her cold lips gradually rose into an arc. Bang! Yun Luofeng's body fiercely pressed against Yun Xiao, pressing the man fiercely against the ground. She kissed him without restraint, her arms tightly pressed against the ground. The two of them were so engrossed in their kiss that they seemed to have become a world of their own. It was as if they had forgotten the people around them. Lin Yating hurriedly covered her mouth and took a few steps back. Her eyes were filled with terror and her delicate body trembled slightly. Not only did Yun Luofeng hug the Ghost Emperor, he even forcefully kissed him. But the Ghost Emperor, who had such a cold personality, not only did he not refuse, he even seemed to be enjoying it. Furthermore, with the Ghost Emperor's strength, if he had not willingly fallen down, Yun Luofeng would not have been able to push him to the ground. In other words, the Ghost Emperor had willingly allowed himself to be pressed down by her. When she thought of this, despair rose in Lin Yating's heart. The man whom she had regarded as her last hope was actually related to Yun Luofeng? Chapter 654. Yun Luofeng finally let go of the man she had pinned down. She smiled evilly and pointed a finger at the man. Yun Xiao, during the time I wasn't by your side, did anyone teach you? I only allow you to teach me. The man raised his eyes and stared at Yun Luofeng seriously. In this lifetime, he would only allow this woman to get close to him. At the same time, he would only be taught by her. Yun Luofeng hugged Yun Xiao once again. Her entire body pressed against his and her chin rested gently on his shoulder. She lowered her eyes and said, Yun Xiao, I missed you. After a year of separation, she finally understood what it meant to miss someone. Perhaps, that inadvertent glimpse of him that year was destined to make her fall into his hand. But she willingly fell into his trap. How could this be? Lin Ji stumbled back and stared at Yun Xiao in fear. He gulped fiercely. How did the Ghost Emperor know Yun Luofeng? Father, what are you talking about? Isn't the Ghost Emperor my brother-in-law? A woman like Yun Luofeng can't even be compared to a brothel girl. How could she be worthy of the Ghost Emperor? After Yun Xiao's appearance, the entire venue had fallen into silence. As a result, Lin Hao's words were clearly heard by everyone present in the venue. How? Lin Ji roared angrily, shut your mouth. This was the first time he had lost his temper at Lin Hao in so many years. Hence, Lin Hao's temper flared up. Father, you were the one who said that the Ghost Emperor would become my brother-in-law. You even said that the Ghost Emperor would kill Yun Luofeng to avenge us. The Ghost Emperor will be here soon and Yun Luofeng will pay for her mistake. Lin Ji's lips were deathly pale. He trembled a few times but he could not make a single sound. All these years, he had given Lin Hao the greatest protection. As a result, Lin Hao did not know anything about the mainland and did not recognize the Ghost Emperor. In Lin Hao's mind, a powerful cultivator like the Ghost Emperor would definitely be surrounded by a group of people and would be incomparably glorious. Yun Xiao had come alone in silence. How could he be the famous Ghost Emperor? Yun Xiao's gaze gradually shifted away from Yun Luofeng and landed on Lin Hao's face. A powerful murderous intent radiated from his body, causing his aura to become incomparably cold. Being locked on by his aura, Lin Hao's body couldn't help but tremble. He subconsciously hid on Lin Ji's body. However, his mouth was still unforgiving, and he angrily said, You are merely the lover of that bitch Yun Luofeng, yet you dare to bully the people of the medical city like this. When the Ghost Emperor arrives, it will be the day of your death. Pa. Lin Ji slapped Lin Hao's face, his voice trembling. Apologize. Father. Apologize to the Ghost Emperor. Originally, Lin Hao was still extremely angry because of his father's slap, but after hearing what his father said next, his gaze unwittingly shook, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. Father, what did you just say? Ghost Emperor? Where is the Ghost Emperor? Lin Ji sighed heavily. At this moment, his heart was filled with regret. He regretted spoiling Lin Hao to such an extent. How that masked man is the Ghost Emperor. Like a bolt out of the blue, Lin Hao's legs trembled and he instantly fell to the ground. His face, which had already turned pale due to excessive indulgence, became even paler at this moment. Father, you're joking with me, aren't you? The Ghost Emperor is my brother-in-law. How could he possibly be Yun Luofeng's lover? Chapter 655. Lin Ji stared at Lin Hao's pale face, gently closed his eyes and sighed softly. Forget about Lin Hao, even he could not believe what was happening before his eyes. Milk Tea's sharp eyes caught sight of Lin Yating, who was trying to sneak away. She instantly jumped and charged towards Lin Yating, her sharp claws biting her calf fiercely. Ah! Lin Yating shrieked in pain. At that moment, everyone's eyes turned towards her. The entire place was abnormally silent. Under everyone's gaze, her lips trembled slightly and she subconsciously took a few steps back. She didn't even have time to deal with her bleeding leg. Milk Tea raised her little head and glanced arrogantly at Lin Yating. She then turned around and quickly returned to Yun Luofeng's side. Are you a disciple of Luo Fu? Lan Hong gently furrowed his brows and asked. Lin Yating's expression froze. Her eyes flickered as she quickly tried to think of a way to leave this place. I seem to remember that based on your position in the Doctors' Association, you do not have the right to attend the meeting. I wonder who allowed you to enter. Lan Hong's gaze inadvertently swept across Hu Po's body and the meaning in his eyes was clear. Thud. Hu Po saw that the situation was not looking good and knelt on the ground in fear. He trembled as he spoke. Elder Lan Hong, Master, it's my fault for allowing her to sneak in. I'll get someone to throw her out later. If Hu Po had said that Lin Yating had bribed her, perhaps she would not have been able to find an excuse. However, in order to shirk responsibility, Hu Po had said that she had sneaked into the meeting. This had given Lin Yating an opportunity. She gritted her teeth and knelt on the ground. Her eyes were filled with a pitiful look as she sobbed. Elder Lan Hong, Elder Ding Ling, this is all my fault. It has nothing to do with senior brother Hu Po. Hu Po stared at Lin Yating in astonishment as if he never thought that she would take all the blame. However, Lin Yating's following words caused his expression to change. My heart aches for senior sister Yating. She's such an outstanding woman, she shouldn't have ended up like this. Lin Yating lowered her eyes and quickly crawled towards the Ghost Emperor. Lord Ghost Emperor, I beg you, only you can save senior sister Yating. Moreover, with senior sister Yating's looks, she is not inferior to Yun Luofeng. After saying that, her voice paused for a moment before she continued. Besides that, Lin Hao had claimed that you were his brother-in-law. That was the Medicine City's own decision and it has nothing to do with senior sister Yating. Previously, the people from the Medicine City had even forced senior sister Yating to seduce you. However, senior sister Yating has always advocated mutual affection and would never do such a thing that is immoral. She's innocent. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of his lips and looked at the woman who had crawled in front of Yun Xiao with a smile that was not a smile. I wonder if you've heard of this saying? What? Lin Yating was stunned. Grandma Wang sells melons and praises herself. Even if you want to sell yourself, you don't have to keep praising yourself. What nonsense are you talking about? Lin Yating's face paled, and anger surged from her chest. She clenched her fists tightly. Yun Luofeng, how can a vicious and merciless woman like you be worthy of the Ghost Emperor? You are just jealous of senior sister Yating. If she wanted to survive, the Ghost Emperor was her only hope. Hence, at this moment, Lin Yating has lost her usual rationality and spoke without thinking. I thought that I've made myself clear enough. Yun Luofeng slowly left Yun Xiao's body and raised his brow evilly. He then smiled gently. Lin Yating, even if you sell yourself off and praise yourself, you still can't sell yourself. Chapter 656. Lin Yating. Upon hearing Yun Luofeng's words, the crowd was stunned as they stared unblinkingly at Lin Yating. Miss Yun, are you sure you're not mistaken? Lan Hong stared blankly and smiled. I think she's called Guo something, she's not Lin Yating. Besides, if she was Lin Yating, she wouldn't have said such self-flattering words. Otherwise, Wouldn't it be disgusting? Lan Hong wasn't speaking up for Lin Yating. Instead, if a person could boast about herself in front of a man, how thick-skinned must she be? Wouldn't she be disgusted by such self-flattering words? Yun Luofeng, Lin Yating bit her lip and said, "Don't accuse me wrongly. I'm not senior sister Yating at all. You're only doing this because you're jealous of senior sister Yating." Even at a time like this, Lin Yating still refused to admit her actions. After all, this mask of hers had been made by a cultivator 2 years ago. Unless there was a special method, it could not be removed. Otherwise, no matter how powerful Yun Luofeng was, he could not reveal her true face in front of everyone. In that moment, Lin Yating finally caught Yun Xiao's attention. The man's gaze was cold and his face was expressionless. His deep black eyes stared coldly at Lin Yating as if he was looking at a dead person. A powerful aura surged from the man's body. His slightly pursed lips formed a cold and hard angle as a vicious aura rose from his body. There was no wind, but his black robes fluttered. Lin Yating swallowed her saliva as her eyes filled with fear. She stumbled back a few steps. All these years, if she had nowhere to vent her frustrations, she would use Guo Fulan's face to commit crimes. Anyway, in the end, Guo Fulan would bear all the notoriety and she would still be the elegant and gentle Lin Yating in the eyes of the world. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng pressed down on Yun Xiao's shoulder as the corners of his lips curled into an even more demonic angle. "I'd like to handle this matter personally." The young girl's words caused the vicious aura from Yun Xiao's body to slowly disappear. His voice was as cold and hoarse as ever as he said, "All right. If she wanted to shine brightly, so what if he was the man behind her back? For her, he was willing to hide all his brilliance. He only needed to silently accompany her, and that was enough. Lin Yating, since you don't want to tell the truth, then I'll make you reveal your true colors." Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a faint smile. He narrowed his eyes and gradually approached Lin Yating. Lin Yating's expression suddenly changed. There was a large crowd behind her, so she had nowhere to retreat to. Suddenly, a few silver needles appeared on the girl's fingertips. With a swoosh, they pierced through the air and pierced Lin Yating's face. "Ah!" Lin Yating screamed shrilly and hurriedly pulled out the silver needles from her face. Her hand was tightly covering her bleeding face as she trembled and stared at Yun Luofeng. "You're not as outstanding as senior sister Yating, and you don't even allow me to say it. I don't know what method you used to confuse the Ghost Emperor, but how can a woman like you, who delivered herself to the Ghost Emperor's side, be compared to a woman like senior sister Yating who doesn't care about power?" The entire square was silent. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at Lin Yating. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. It was as if they had seen something inconceivable. Chapter 657. What's wrong? Lin Yating noticed the crowd's stares and subconsciously wiped her face. In that instant, she had accidentally pulled off a human skin mask. When she saw the human skin mask in her hand, Lin Yating's shrill voice rang through the entire hall. "Ah! How could this be?" That powerful cultivator had clearly told her that she could only use the potion that he had given her to remove this mask. What on earth had Yun Luofeng done? At this moment, it was as if Lin Yating had been stripped naked and all the flaws on her body were exposed to the sun. Hu Po was so frightened that he immediately fainted, hoping to escape his master's rebuke. Unfortunately, he had obviously thought too much. Now, everyone's eyes were on Lin Yating, including his master. No one had even spared him a second glance. "Lin Yating, she's actually Lin Yating. I had originally thought that senior sister Yating was gentle and elegant. I never thought that she would be this kind of person. I'm guessing that she has disguised herself as someone else. That's why she has unscrupulously revealed her true nature." Did you all hear what she had said just now? She actually claimed that she was extremely beautiful and had a good temperament. She even claimed that she wasn't the kind of person who would cling to the rich. She even narcissistically thought that Yun Luofeng was jealous of her. Stop talking, I'm about to vomit. She clearly wants to seduce the Ghost Emperor. She even pretends to be pure and says that she's not attached to power. The crowd's mockery caused Lin Yating's face to turn as white as a sheet. She held a human skin mask in her hand and stood alone in the middle of the crowd, accepting everyone's criticism and humiliation. It was as if she had become incompatible with the entire world. Yun Luofeng. All of this was Yun Luofeng's fault. Suddenly, she raised her head and her venomous gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on Yun Luofeng. Lin Yating, you rebellious daughter. Lin Ji had already rushed in front of her and slapped her across the face. He said angrily, you were the one who said that you had the confidence to seduce the Ghost Emperor, yet you pushed all the blame onto me. If you hadn't said those words, would Hao and I have thought that way? You still dare to talk about me? Lin Yating sneered. She retracted her gaze from Yun Luofeng and stared coldly at Lin Ji. If it weren't for that good son of yours stirring up trouble everywhere, would he have attracted so much trouble? If not for her, I would still be the most outstanding disciple of the Doctors' Association, with a bright future ahead of me. But now, because of you, my life has been ruined. You. Lin Ji was so angry that he pointed at Lin Yating. Don't forget, if it wasn't for me, you would have died long ago. How could you have the status you have today? Lin Yating smiled coldly. Then I would rather die back then than suffer the humiliation I'm suffering now. Pa. Lin Ji slapped her again. This time, he used a lot of force, so much so that a trace of blood appeared on the corner of Lin Yating's mouth. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and a ruthless glint flashed across her eyes. These 2 slaps are enough for me to repay you for taking me in. Next, try and hit me again. Lin Ji had just raised his hand when he met Lin Yating's eyes, which were filled with hatred. His heart trembled involuntarily. His hand froze in midair, unable to swing down. Yun Luofeng. Lin Yating turned to look at Yun Luofeng, her beautiful eyes filled with hatred. You've ruined my life, just like the medical city. The person who ruined your life. Yun Luofeng paused after saying this, then continued, isn't that you? Chapter 658. The person who ruined your life, wasn't it you? This sentence caused Lin Yating's heart to tremble. Suddenly, she laughed maniacally. Her laughter was filled with malevolence and madness. Yun Luofeng, what happened more than 10 years ago was indeed the medical city's fault. However, after so many years, why can't you let us go? Now, you're telling me that the person who ruined me was me? She stopped laughing and stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. No, the one who ruined me was the medical city and you. Boom. Suddenly, Yun Luofeng raised his leg and kicked Lin Yating out of the way. Lin Yating fell into the crowd and spat out a mouthful of blood. She glared venomously at Yun Luofeng. This kick, I am returning it to you on behalf of my second uncle. Bang! Yun Luofeng quickly arrived in front of Lin Yating and raised his leg to stomp down fiercely. This stomp caused Lin Yating's bones to break and fresh blood to gush out of her mouth. This kick, I am returning it to you on behalf of everyone in the Yun family. Another kick. This time, she kicked Lin Yating's waist, sending her body flying a few meters away before she violently slammed into a pillar. This kick, I am doing it for myself. Yun Xiao is my man, you dare to peep at him, you deserve to die. The young girl raised her head slightly, her demonic eyes looking down at Yun Luofeng condescendingly. I have never allowed anyone to peep at my man. Even a single strand of hair on his body belongs to me, no one else can touch it. The young girl's domineering voice slowly rang throughout the venue. The Roaring Dragon mainland was a world where men were superior to women. Generally speaking, only men could declare their sovereignty over their women. There had never been a woman who could say such words in such a domineering manner. From head to toe, even a single strand of hair on his body belonged to her. How domineering must one be to be able to say such words? Yun Xiao's grim eyes gradually softened and the corners of his cold and stiff lips slowly curled into a shallow arc. His gaze remained fixed on Yun Luofeng. Within his pair of black eyes, the young girl's peerless and elegant figure was clearly reflected. Yun Luofeng. Lin Yating chuckled. Her smile was filled with mockery and contempt. You underestimate the Ghost Emperor's position on this continent. Aside from me, there will definitely be other women. When that time comes, will you be able to stop so many women? Those who want to steal my man, I'll allow them to come. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. However, if one comes, I'll kill one. If two come, I'll kill both. I'll kill until no one dares to peep at him. Lin Yating was stunned. Perhaps she had not expected Yun Luofeng to say such a thing. She hurriedly turned her gaze towards Yun Xiao and asked in a trembling voice, You're just going to allow her to do this? Yun Xiao's faint smile disappeared when he faced Lin Yating, and his voice was cold and stern. I will bury her body. So what if she wanted to kill him? He would always follow behind her and bury her body. Puff. Lin Yating almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and her lips trembled slightly. The Ghost Emperor. He really didn't like ordinary men. However, he, who had always been cold and heartless and had never been close to women, was now so tolerant towards a woman. Why was it that such a man's gaze was not on her? Lin Yating's heart clenched fiercely due to jealousy. She clenched her fists tightly and her nails dug deep into her palms. However, she did not feel it at all. Chapter 659. Ghost Emperor, your status is so noble, why do you let her do everything? Lin Yating's heart was still filled with unwillingness. She clenched her teeth and asked this question. Everyone could see that the Ghost Emperor was at a disadvantage in front of Yun Luofeng. For this woman, he lowered all his qualifications and gave her the greatest indulgence. You don't have the right to know. The man's voice was cold and heartless. Aside from Yun Luofeng, the other women didn't even have the right to look at him, let alone answer him. After saying this, the man's dark eyes stared deeply at Yun Luofeng. Should I kill them now? He said it very simply, as if killing was as easy as eating and drinking. Wait a little longer. Yun Luofeng curled the corners of her lips and said with a light smile. All right. The man's words were concise and comprehensive. You won't ask for the reason? Yun Luofeng gently raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. The man paused and said, You have your reasons for every decision you make. I only need to trust you. He trusted her without a reason. Even if one day she turned her sword against him, he would still choose to trust her. Yun Luofeng curled the corners of her lips. The people from the medical pavilion sent news that second uncle is already on his way here. According to the route, he will arrive today. When that time comes, I want to give the people of the medical city a surprise. She deliberately lowered her voice when she said this so that only Yun Xiao, who was next to her, could hear it. Yun Xiao glanced at Yun Luofeng, then turned and walked out of the venue. Not long after, the cold figure once again flashed in from outside the venue. Compared to when he had left, the man now carried a chair in his left hand and a pot of grapes in his right. He strode in front of Yun Luofeng. Where did you get this chair and fruit? Yun Luofeng was startled and asked. The man replied seriously, I stole them. Yun Luofeng's forehead twitched slightly as she looked at the man's matter-of-fact expression. Outside, this man was always so overbearing. Yun Luofeng straightened her long skirt and sat down. Her body leaned lazily against the back of the chair. She raised her eyebrows and looked at the crowd from the medicine city. Lin Ji, do you know why I allowed you to come to this venue today? Lin Ji was stunned. Even though the Doctors' Association did not completely restrict his freedom, it would not be so easy for him to enter the venue. Therefore, Lin Ji had been wondering why he could enter the venue so easily. Could it be related to Yun Luofeng? Because Yun Luofeng paused. His slightly narrowed eyes emitted an evil light. Today, I have a surprise for your medical city. Lin Yating's body trembled and she lowered her head. She couldn't even protect herself now, so naturally, she couldn't care less about the medical city. Furthermore, compared to her hatred towards Yun Luofeng, she hated the medicine city the most. If Lin Ji had not spoiled and indulged Lin Hao, she would not have fallen to such a state. Hence, why would she worry about the medical city? Yun Luofeng. Lin Hao jumped up once again and roared angrily, You are a woman who is inferior to even a brothel girl. If you hadn't seduced the elders of the Doctors' Association, do you think you have the qualifications to step into this kind of place? You and Yun Qingya are both not good people. Yun Xiao's eyes darkened as she coldly glanced at Lin Hao. With just a single glance, Lin Hao felt a powerful force explode against his chest. His body was instantly sent flying dozens of meters away, fiercely crashing into the crowd. Chapter 660. Just as Lin Hao was about to crawl up from the ground, the black-clothed cold man had already appeared in front of him. At this moment, Lin Hao could clearly feel the hostility coming from the man's body. The man's hand tightly grabbed onto Lin Hao's sleeves and fiercely smashed his body onto the ground. With a loud bang, a deep crater appeared on the ground. It could be seen how much strength the man had used. In the deep pit, Lin Hao kept vomiting blood. He tried to get up, but as he moved, his entire body was in pain, as if all the bones in his body had been broken. "Father, save me." His voice was trembling and pleading. It was like a hand that fiercely pinched Lin Ji's heart. Enough. Lin Ji clenched his fists tightly and closed his eyes. The moment he opened them, a hint of determination appeared in his eyes. "If you want to hit me, hit me. Hao is innocent." Even just now, Lin Ji still hated Lin Hao for offending the Ghost Emperor due to his ignorance. However, seeing his beloved son suffer such a serious injury, how could his heart not ache? He would rather be the one being tortured by the Ghost Emperor than watch his own son get injured. "Innocent." Yun Luofeng sneered and said mockingly, "Back then, he competed with my second uncle on the arena. It was precisely because my second uncle defeated him that he became angry out of humiliation and sent an expert from the medical city to kill my second uncle. Is this considered innocent?" "This is all my..." Lin Ji opened his mouth and said. He wanted to bear all the blame for Lin Hao, but before he could finish his words, Lin Hao's crazed voice came from the deep pit. "Yun Qingya deserved to die. As the young city lord of the medical city, he is just the young master of a general's mansion. Thus, I competed with him because I thought highly of him. What right does he have to defeat me? He should just stand there and let me beat him up." Lin Hao gritted his teeth. All these years, whenever he heard Yun Qingya's name, he would think of that match more than 10 years ago. That was also the greatest humiliation he had ever suffered in his life. "Humph." Lin Hao snorted coldly and said mockingly, "The people of the medical city all know how to let me win in the arena. Only Yun Qingya is extremely stupid. Fortunately, that bastard paid the price for his mistake. Even if you take revenge on my medical city, that bastard Yun Qingya won't be able to come back to life. Ha ha ha." He laughed crazily, as if he wanted to vent all the anger he had accumulated over the years. However, at this moment, a cold voice tore through the sky and entered everyone's ears. "Are you sure I can't come back to life?" The man's cold voice, to Lin Hao, was a nightmare for more than 10 years. Therefore, after hearing these words, his smile suddenly froze. He raised his head mechanically and looked stiffly at the sky. In the azure sky, the man stood with his hands behind his back. His green robe fluttered in the wind, and he was as elegant as a song. His jet-black hair fluttered in the wind, and a sarcastic smile appeared on his handsome face. Rumble. In an instant, Lin Hao's mind was in chaos. It was as if countless bolts of lightning were exploding in his head. He stared blankly at the elegant and refined man in the air. He was so shocked that he could not speak. After a long while, he finally reacted. His face turned from pale to angry as he roared angrily, "Yun Qingya, impossible. Why are you still alive, you beast?" More than 10 years ago, this bastard had clearly died at the hands of the experts of the medical city. Why was he still alive? Chapter 661. In the sky, the man smiled indifferently. His cold gaze gradually swept past Lin Hao's crazed face and landed on Yun Luofeng. At this moment, his gaze became gentle, as if the sun was bathing her body. "Little Feng'er, I'm back, I'm back." The man's voice moved Yun Luofeng. The corner of her mouth moved as she stared deeply at the man in the sky and said, Second uncle, should I congratulate you for breaking through to the heavenly spirit realm? Flying in the air, heavenly spirit realm. Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, everyone came to a realization. This Yun Qingya of the Yun family had actually broken through to the heavenly spirit realm. Lin Ji's expression was very ugly. He took a few steps back and fell to the ground. His face was filled with despair and ashen. I was lucky to obtain the inheritance of an expert, which is why I was able to break through so quickly. The reason why the forest of no return was so dangerous, yet there were still many people who wanted to go there, was because there were countless miracles in the forest of no return. Once one returned alive from the forest of no return, they would definitely be able to obtain an extremely powerful strength. This was also the reason why many people wanted to go to the forest of no return to try their luck. Of course, very few people could return alive, and most of them were buried in the forest. Little Feng'er, just leave the matters of the medical city to me. Yun Qingya smiled faintly. I want to take revenge for what happened back then. 10 years. Who knew what kind of life he had lived for the past 10 years? And the one who brought him all of this was the medical city. Yun Qingya's gaze slowly focused on the people of the medical city. His feet gradually walked downwards, and the moment his feet touched the ground, it was as if countless green lotuses bloomed beneath his feet. Do you still remember what you said to me 10 years ago? Yun Qingya still had a smile on her face, but that smile made one's hair stand on end. 10 years ago, you told me that I was a weak expert in this world. My family background could not be compared to the medical city, so even if I died, I deserved it. With every step Yun Qingya took, Lin Ji's heart trembled a little. He clenched his fists tightly and looked at the elegant man who was slowly walking down from the sky in fear. You even said that it is my honor to have Lin Hao spar with me, and I should stand on the stage and allow him to beat me without retaliating. Since I've retaliated, I need to accept the severe punishment from the medical city. 10 years ago, he had used all his strength to escape the pursuit. But because of this, he had to hide in a secret chamber for more than 10 years. How cruel was this for a young man? Now, our roles have been reversed. The person who will be killed will be the medicine city. Yun Qingya slightly raised her clear and cold eyes, and the smile on her face slowly disappeared. Oh right, there's also the expert from the medical city who once chased after me. I've never forgotten the faces of those people in the past 10 years. Ringo opened his mouth, but found that his throat was so dry that he could not make a sound. Only now did he regret it. If they had not indulged Lin Hao since young, the medical city would not have ended up like this. Father. Lin Hao's voice was filled with uncontrollable anger. Why didn't you tell me that you were still alive? Why? Lin Hao laughed bitterly and shook his head. I just didn't want you to be agitated, so I hid it from you. Hearing this, Lin Hao became even angrier. Then why didn't you kill him back then? Why didn't you destroy the Yun family? If you had destroyed everyone in the Yun family, how could so many things have happened now? Chapter 662. Obviously, Lin Hao had already placed all the blame on Lin Ji. However, he did not reflect on his own actions at all. Lin Ji's heart became more and more desperate. He did not expect that his son would blame him at a time like this. Heh. Lin Yating sneered and said mockingly, this is the son you've doted on for so many years. Not only does he like to cause trouble, he also likes to shirk responsibility at a time like this. If it wasn't for him, how could so many things have happened? Shut up. Lin Ji glared fiercely at Lin Yating, his face sinister. Who do you think you are? Don't forget, just now, you disguised yourself as someone else and praised yourself in front of the Ghost Emperor, trying to seduce him. Who am I doing this for? Lin Yating's heart was torn apart, and the expression on her face became colder and colder. If it wasn't for the medical city, I would have died a long time ago. Why would I need to seduce the Ghost Emperor? Everything I did was for you guys, but in the end, you say that I'm not a good person? Lin Ji closed his eyes in pain. Even if his son wasn't, he was still the most important person in his life. How could he ignore him? Yun Qingya, if you want to kill me, then kill me. Let Hao go. He opened his eyes and looked straight at Yun Qingya. His eyes were filled with the determination to face death calmly. Yun Qingya sneered, "Do you think I will let anyone in the medical city go?" As soon as he finished speaking, his voice paused for a moment before he continued. "Back then, I will not let go of anyone who hurt me." Lin Ji's face gradually darkened. If he could start over, he would never indulge Lin Hao like before. Because conniving was harming him. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Lin Ji laughed wildly. As he laughed, tears flowed down his cheeks. "Yun Qingya, you've won, and I've lost miserably. However, even if I have to risk my life, I will send Hao out. I won't let him die in this place." With a swoosh, Lin Ji quickly rushed towards Lin Hao and lifted him up from the deep pit. Then, all the spiritual power gathered in his arm and he forcefully threw Lin Hao's body out. "Hao, hurry up and leave. Don't take revenge. Father." Lin Hao's voice was mournful as he extended his hand towards Lin Ji, who was on the ground. His face was filled with pain. Perhaps, at this moment, he finally felt some regret in his heart. At the same time, an eagle flew over, and Lin Hao's body landed steadily on its back. "Master." Lin Ruobai's heart tightened as he hurriedly looked at Yun Luofeng. Lin Ruobai nodded. Since his master had said so, Yun Qingya, the Yun, Luobai, Yun, Ge, Yun, Luo, Yun, Ge, Yun, and Lin Ruobai nodded. Since his master had said so, it proved that Yun Qingya could solve this matter with her own strength. Yun, Ge, Yun, Ge, Yun, Ge, the Yun, Yun. Yun Qingya looked at the eagle that was flying into the distance and said calmly, "With the speed of this eagle, if I can finish off Lin Ji in one move, I should be able to catch up." Lin Ji's expression changed. He snorted coldly and said, "Yun Qingya, as a heavenly spirit realm cultivator, do you think you can finish me off in one move? Even if my strength is inferior to yours, I can still stop you for a moment." "You also said that a person like me would never be able to make it big in my lifetime." Hearing Yun Qingya's words, that person's body trembled. His heart was filled with regret. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have said such humiliating words back then. "The medical city will be eliminated and all of you will die." Just as everyone was thinking of countermeasures, the man's voice rang out again. It was so cold that it made them tremble even more. "Second uncle's matter has finally been resolved." Yun Luofeng held the grape that Yun Xiao brought to his lips and lazily leaned back in his chair. "Yun Xiao, we should take care of our own matters next. What do you think?" Chapter 664. Yun Xiao stared blankly at the young girl's devilish smile. He then replied honestly, "I had arrived a few days late because I had discovered that person's tracks." He thought that Yun Luofeng was reprimanding him for his late arrival. Hence, he did not wait for her to interrogate him and told the truth. "That person? My mother." Even though Yun Xiao had never said anything, Yun Luofeng could sense that he held a grudge against his mother. That year, after his mother had left the Xiao family, her whereabouts were unknown and she had never looked for him. As a result, he had lived alone in the forest of no return for a few years. Even though he had missed his mother in the beginning, in the end, after experiencing countless narrow escapes from death, even the most intense longing had turned into resentment. Even so, he still wanted to find her. At the very least, he wanted to understand why she had never looked for him after all these years. "Yun Xiao, I didn't ask you where you've been these past few days." Yun Luofeng stepped out of her thoughts and narrowed her eyes. She slowly rose to her feet and approached the man in front of her. The corners of her lips gradually curled into an angle. "I just feel that you've been trained by me for so long. It's time to verify the results." Even though the man in front of her was wearing a mask, Yun Luofeng could still sense the change in his aura at this very moment. "As long as you're willing, I can do anything for you, including warming your bed. The man's eyes were filled with sincerity as he stared quietly at the young girl standing in front of him. Warming my bed? Yun Luofeng raised the corners of her lips. When you say warming my bed, do you mean warming my blankets or do you mean something else? When they had first met, she had asked this man to warm her bed. In the end, he had really done it for her. At that time, she had felt as if she had been struck by lightning that such a naive man could exist in this world. She never thought that the words warming my bed would come out of his mouth once again. Yun Luofeng had just finished speaking when she suddenly fell into an embrace. The man's low and hoarse voice rang out next to her ear. When I say warming my bed, you'll know what I mean in a moment. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes and a demonic light flashed across her eyes. The corners of her lips gently curled into an angle. Yun Xiao, I haven't seen you for a year and you've actually learned to be two-faced. She placed her hand gently on Yun Xiao's chest and pushed his body away slightly. Her slender fingers gently hooked the man's chin and she said with a faint smile, but, I like it. These 3 words, I like, instantly caused Yun Xiao's pupils to contract and her breathing to unconsciously heat up. There are too many people here. Let's go back to the room and talk. The young girl's smile was very beautiful, so beautiful that it made people's hearts beat faster. Especially, after she finished speaking, she hooked her finger at the man. This seductive action, in an instant, could hook the soul of others. Yun Qingya was already used to her niece's behavior, so she didn't have any expression on her face as she continued to deal with the people from the medical city. However, those who didn't understand Yun Luofeng, after hearing the conversation between her and Yun Xiao, couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Some of the men even looked at Yun Xiao with envious gazes. How they wished that they were the ones being treated like this. Lin Yating was mad with jealousy. She clenched her fists tightly and stared at Yun Luofeng with vicious eyes. Unfortunately, she couldn't even protect herself now, so how could she talk about taking revenge? Chapter 665. Inside the room, the dim yellow candlelight enveloped the entire room. It flickered between bright and dark, contrasting the handsome man and beautiful woman standing in front of the window. The scene of the 2 of them fighting side by side was like a pair of immortal lovers, holding hands as they watched the prosperity of the mortal world. Yun Xiao, the young girl's thin lips gently opened as she softly called out the man's name. However, as soon as she said those 2 words, the man suddenly leaned forward and kissed her lips. The man's kiss was domineering. His manly scent, mixed with a faint fragrance, burrowed into the tip of her nose. Yun Luofeng gently narrowed his eyes, seriously sizing up the man who was kissing her. She didn't know how many times this man had taken the initiative to kiss her. She had also gotten used to it from her initial astonishment. However, compared to being pressed down, she preferred to press down on this man. Bai Su is in danger. The man released the young girl he had pressed against the wall and said seriously. Yun Luofeng smiled, and then, you, stay away from him. Yun Xiao, are you jealous? Looking at the man's slightly awkward yet domineering expression, the smile on Yun Luofeng's face deepened. His eyes looked at the man in front of him with a faint smile. Yun Xiao nodded very honestly, yes. He paused, then added, also, I'm afraid he'll hurt you. Yun Xiao, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes again and said with an evil smile, as for that Bai Su, I'll also stay away from him. That man gives me a very uncomfortable feeling. The feeling Bai Su gave her was different from the one Yun Xiao gave her. By Yun Xiao's side, she was very relaxed. Even if she was completely unguarded, she knew that this man would protect her at any time of danger. Bai Su was different. As long as Bai Su appeared in front of her, she would feel a dangerous aura. That kind of aura made her raise her guard at any time, not daring to relax even a little. That's right. She seemed to remember something and continued to say, tell me about your mother's situation first. Yun Xiao fell silent. After a long while, he then said, she is at the other end of the forest of no return. The forest of no return traversed the entire continent. The place where Yun Luofeng lived was on the east side of the Forest of No Return. As for what lay on the west side, because one had to pass through the entire Forest of No Return, no one knew. Yun Xiao, if you want to find your mother, I will accompany you. Yun Luofeng raised his eyes and stared at the man standing in front of him. All right, Yun Xiao gently pursed his thin lips. The young girl's figure was reflected in his deep eyes. I haven't seen her for many years and I don't understand how she is now, but the look in his eyes became exceptionally firm at this moment. No matter what happens, I will stand by your side, even if you go against the heavens. Yun Xiao's voice paused for a moment as he stared deeply at Yun Luofeng. If you go against the heavens, then the heavens will be my enemy. Even if it meant risking his life, he would protect the person she loved. Her enemies, he would also risk his life to eradicate. Yun Xiao, Yun Luofeng suddenly took 2 steps forward and pressed down on Yun Xiao's shoulder tightly. He then pushed his body towards the ground and flipped himself over. Why don't we dual cultivate? How about that? With a gentle wave of her hand, the man's clothes were stripped off. Instantly, that alluring 8-pack was reflected in the young girl's eyes. Chapter 666. These 2 words were the most sensitive to little Mo. He, who had been weeding and watering Yun Luofeng's herb field, immediately jumped up, his large bright eyes filled with excitement. Master, you finally thought it through. It really wasn't easy. Little Mo was so excited that he almost cried. He felt as if the clouds had parted to see the moon. As long as his master and Yun Xiao dual cultivated, then his master's cultivation would increase by a lot, and the time before he could leave the divine grimoire space would also increase. When Yun Luofeng finished speaking, Yun Xiao tightly grabbed her arm and pressed the girl who had been riding on him to the ground. Perhaps he was afraid that Yun Luofeng's head would hit the ground in the moment of the pressure, so he subconsciously held the back of her head with his hand to prevent the girl from being hit. After dual cultivation, you have to be responsible for me. Yun Luofeng was stunned and asked, how? Get married. What a man wanted was very simple. Since they had already decided to dual cultivate, they had to get married. You can't be a hooligan. He paused for a moment, then continued. Yun Luofeng's voice suddenly disappeared. After a long time, she finally found her voice. Where did you hear the words hooligan? As the saying goes, love without the goal of marriage is hooligan. Now, this guy must have heard this phrase from somewhere and decided that she was a hooligan. Even though she had indeed been hooligan to Yun Xiao, your grandfather said so. The man had always been very honest in front of Yun Luofeng, so he didn't hesitate to sell out the old man. Yun Luofeng's forehead twitched. Stay away from that old man in the future, in case he leads you astray. You want to be a hooligan? Yun Xiao lowered his head to look at the girl under him. You've already eaten me dry. I belong to you for the rest of my life. You can't chase me away, you can't beat me away, I will pester you to death. After saying this, he kissed the girl's lips forcefully, as if he wanted to vent all the longing he had for the past few days through a China kiss. No one knew how he had spent his time in the secret realm. Even the 7 years he spent in the Forest of No Return couldn't compare to this 1 year. The 2 of them had unknowingly taken off their clothes and Yun Xiao was afraid that the ground would be too cold, so he moved the young lady onto the bed. In this spacious bed, the 2 of them faced each other. Yun Xiao's movements were a little jerky, but it made him seem even more innocent. However, just as the 2 of them were planning to take the next step, a bloody smell suddenly entered their nostrils, causing Yun Xiao's expression to change abruptly. Are you hurt? He couldn't care less about the most primitive desires in his heart. He hurriedly pressed down on Yun Luofeng's shoulder and anxiously scanned her body. When he saw the pool of blood on her lower body, the man's expression suddenly froze. At this moment, an almost imperceptible trace of awkwardness flashed across his handsome face. Of course, Yun Luofeng was even more embarrassed. Her monthly period was always punctual, but this time, it was about 10 days early, which caught her off guard. Suddenly, as if she had remembered something, she raised her head and fixed her gaze on the man. Yun Xiao, do you know what this is? Under Yun Luofeng's gaze, Yun Xiao slowly nodded. Back in the Yun family, in order to make it easier for me to take care of you, I had looked up some books on women. Those books said that after a woman's period comes, she needs to use ginger tea to warm her stomach, so I remembered it. Chapter 667. No, this isn't right. Suddenly, Little Mo's panicked voice came from Yun Luofeng's soul. Because Master is a virtual spirit body, your period will definitely come on time. There can't be any deviation. Especially when Master and Yun Xiao are dual cultivating. This is too much of a coincidence. This isn't right. Yun Luofeng was startled and frowned slightly. She suddenly looked up at Yun Xiao and said, Yun Xiao, wait for me for a moment. After saying this, she closed her eyes and let her consciousness enter the divine grimoire space. The first thing he saw was a flustered Little Mo. The little guy was holding a book in his hand and he seemed to be searching for something. Little Mo, what's going on? Yun Luofeng frowned and asked. I'm not sure. I'm looking for an answer now. Little Mo bit his lips. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. I found it. I know the reason. Little Mo stood up from the ground and kept the ancient book in his hand. He looked up at Yun Luofeng with his big bright eyes. This ancient book says that when a virtual spirit body and a spiritual body dual cultivate, a large amount of power will surge into the body. If the cultivator's power is too low, his body will explode and he will die. Therefore, only when the virtual spirit body breaks through to the venerable spirit body can they dual cultivate. Yun Luofeng smiled. His smile was evil and it made Little Mo's hair stand on end. Master. Little Mo gulped and took a few steps back. Little Mo, why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Yun Luofeng took a few steps closer to Little Mo. His body exuded a dangerous aura. Little Mo wanted to cry. I don't know either. I've forgotten many things. I didn't know this would happen. Then tell me, when I was in the Xiao family, I saw Yun Xiao naked. Why didn't this happen? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and continued to ask. That's probably because Master didn't feel lust then. This time, you felt lust and the Encyclopedia of Medicine sensed it. That's why your period came early. Little Mo's big bright eyes were full of fear. Master, I really don't know anything. I'm innocent. At this point, Little Mo's heart was filled with regret. Just as the two of them were about to successfully dual cultivate, something like this happened. What book did you just open? Yun Luofeng asked with an evil smile. This is an ancient book. Written on it are some things that are unknown to the people of the continent. Among them are also records of medical books. Little Mo replied weakly. Now, he would answer whatever Yun Luofeng asked. He did not dare to go against him at all. Memorize that ancient book within 3 days, Yun Luofeng said indifferently as he raised his eyes. What? Little Mo was so shocked that he almost jumped up. Master, you're being too cruel to me. I hate reading books the most. He had stayed in the divine grimoire space for so many years, but he still hadn't memorized that ancient book. It was clear how much he hated memorizing books. If he hadn't slacked off, he wouldn't have made such a mistake. Do you choose to endorse him or become Little White's wife? Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Little Mo. His voice was threatening. Little Mo pouted and looked pitifully at Yun Luofeng. Can I choose neither? Chapter 668. Yun Luofeng gently raised an eyebrow and looked at Xiao Mo with a smile. What do you think? These 3 words caused Xiao Mo to look even more aggrieved. His resentful eyes stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. If anyone who was unaware of the situation were to see this, they would certainly think that Yun Luofeng had done something worse than an animal to him. That. Xiao Mo replied pitifully, can you give me half a month's time? 3 days is too short. In that instant, he had made his decision. He would rather memorize books than become Xiao Bai's wife. Besides, he was a man, How could he marry a little girl? All right. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and smiled evilly. If you can't memorize this ancient book in half a month's time, I will immediately betroth you to Xiao Bai. Hearing this, Xiao Mo immediately jumped to his feet. His delicate, jade-like features were filled with determination. Master, don't worry, I will memorize the contents of this ancient book. What a joke! That little girl, Xiao Bai, is much more terrifying than memorizing books. How could he possibly disobey Yun Luofeng's orders? Millimeter. Just then, Yun Luofeng sensed a ripple in the space outside and a cold light flashed across his eyes. It seems that someone has barged in. Then, he hurriedly sent his consciousness out of the divine grimoire space. In an elegant room, the young girl, who had been resting with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes. In that instant, a familiar face was reflected in her eyes, causing her pupils to shrink abruptly. The night breeze blew past and his black robes fluttered. The man stood silently under the moonlight, displaying a grim and murderous aura. The aura around his body was swift and fierce and filled with a vicious aura. At this moment, the man in front of Yun Xiao noticed that Yun Luofeng had already opened his eyes. His handsome, jade-like face curled into a demonic smile. That smile may have been very beautiful, but it caused Yun Luofeng's heart to surge with anger. Bai Su, what are you doing here? Her eyes were cold and gloomy as she climbed out of bed. Yun Luofeng then realized that she had unknowingly put on her clothes. The man's smile deepened when he heard the young girl's eerie voice. Of course. To marry you. To marry you, of course. These words completely aroused the anger in Yun Xiao's heart. His black eyes grew even colder and colder as his deep and hoarse voice rang out in Yun Luofeng's ear. Leave it to me. All right. Yun Luofeng nodded lightly. She had great confidence in Yun Xiao's strength. Yun Xiao's cold gaze turned towards Bai Su as his voice contained a strong murderous intent. Get out. The man's style had always been extremely cold when it came to talking to unimportant people. He would never waste his breath to say an extra word. Bai Su waved the fan in his hand and smiled evilly. I must have that girl, Yun Luofeng. If you stop me, I can only kill you. Loser. Yun Xiao's voice was as cold and callous as ever, but it was able to pierce deeply into one's heart. More than a year ago, in the flowing gold nation, Bai Su had been defeated by him. Now, if he wasn't defeated, then what was he? Sure enough, Bai Su's eyes sank when she heard the man's words. She then replied icily, I may not have been able to defeat you in the past, but that doesn't mean that I'm no match for you now. If you have the ability, come at me and let's have a showdown. He then turned around and walked out of the door. Before he left, Bai Su turned around and looked at Yun Luofeng. She then smiled mysteriously and maliciously, as long as I kill your man, you will belong to me from now on. Hence, after a while, you will belong to the Bai family. Chapter 669. Faced with Bai Su's demonic yet confident features, Yun Luofeng curled his lips into a smile. You're no match for Yun Xiao. Bai Su's eyes darkened. You have that much confidence in him? That's right. Why? Because he's my man. Because he is my man, and I will always believe in my man. Perhaps it was because of Yun Luofeng's words that Yun Xiao's malevolence was no longer as strong as it had been before. The coldness in his black eyes gradually faded and the corners of his lips slowly curled into a small angle. Wait for me. After he finished speaking, he walked into the night. His black robe gradually became one with the night, and he disappeared from Yun Luofeng's line of sight. The night was silent. In the overgrown forest, Yun Xiao paused in his steps and turned coldly towards Bai Su. This should be about the end. Bai Su laughed mockingly. May I ask, why did you leave the Doctors' Association so far away? Because. Yun Xiao's voice was low and his eyes were cold. I'm afraid that if I use too much power, I will accidentally hurt her who is nearby. His power exists to protect her, not to hurt her. Yun Xiao, Bai Su smiled, I really want to know just how powerful you are. I wonder if I'll be able to experience your true power today. Yun Xiao did not speak and only used his power to answer Bai Su. Suddenly, a powerful energy surged from his body and even the sky was covered by dark clouds. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. His black robes fluttered under the night sky, accentuating the man's aura with a cold and murderous aura. It was a suffocating aura. Bai Su's expression gradually turned serious and his demonic eyes stared deeply at the man. So, this is the Ghost Emperor's true power. Since that's the case, I must have a good fight with you today. Once he had spoken, an aura rose from Bai Su's body as well. Under the envelopment of that aura, a strong wind rose and the leaves rustled loudly. Boom! The two of them launched their attacks at the same time. A powerful force spread out from their bodies and the entire forest was flattened in an instant. Bai Su took a few steps back and a trickle of blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. He raised his brows and stared coldly at the black-robed man. I, Bai Su, do not admire many people in my life. You, Ghost Emperor, are one of them. Bai Su wiped the blood from the corner of her lips and laughed softly. Unfortunately, we are rivals in love. Love rival? Yun Xiao glanced at him coldly. You don't have the qualifications. In reality, Bai Su did not like Yun Luofeng, he only wanted to pull her into the Bai family. This was something that anyone could see. When Bai Su heard Yun Xiao's merciless words, he narrowed his eyes and a dangerous glint flashed across his eyes. Whether I'm qualified or not, you'll know in the future. Today, aside from looking for her, I've come here for another reason. I want to test your current power and now, I've already sensed your true power. Bai Su gently curled the corners of his lips. Perhaps, the two of us will become archenemies and the winner will get her. Boom. The aura from Yun Xiao's body grew thicker and thicker. Like a great mountain, it pressed down from all directions. The entire sky was now filled with darkness and it was so heavy that it made it difficult for one to breathe. Chapter 670. You won't have a chance to win. Yun Xiao slowly approached Bai Su and a long sword had appeared in his hand. A cold and grim aura surged from the blade of the sword, causing one to tremble in fear. Ghost Emperor. Bai Su straightened his body and leaned lazily against a large rock behind him. He stared at Yun Xiao fearlessly. You can't kill me. Bai Su's voice carried a hint of provocation as he sensed the man's murderous intent. I admit that I can't defeat you, but you can't kill me either. If I want to escape, I'm afraid that you won't be able to stop me. Yun Xiao paused in his tracks as his grim, black eyes stared icily at Bai Su. The murderous intent on his body did not diminish. Instead, it increased. I won't let anyone threaten her. I've said it before, you can't kill me. Bai Su repeated himself once again. The man's black robes fluttered wildly amidst the wild winds. His aura increased abruptly and countless black flames seemed to form around his body as he charged towards Bai Su. Even if I can't kill you, I can make it so that you won't be able to appear by her side. Boom. The flames were like hands baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they quickly engulfed Bai Su. However, the flames soon exploded and Bai Su's wretched figure appeared under the dusky sky. At this moment, Bai Su's face was slightly pale. His handsome features were shrouded in a layer of evil and cold light. His crescent-colored robes were in tatters and he no longer had his previous threatening air of nobility. Suddenly, he laughed softly. His laughter was eerie and extremely terrifying. Ghost Emperor, I'll get what I want even if I have to risk my life. Bang! Just as Bai Su had spoken, a hole suddenly exploded under his feet and his entire body fell into the hole. However, just as he fell into the hole, the ground which had been blasted away returned to its original state as if nothing had happened at all. Yun Xiao's face remained cold and grim as he faced everything before him as if he had already predicted everything. Master! Qin Yuan slowly descended from the sky and stood behind Yun Xiao. He cupped his fists respectfully and said, Should I dig 3 feet into the ground and dig him out? There's no need. Yun Xiao's eyes were extremely cold. His already left. Qin Yuan lowered his head. What if Bai Su, he was burned by the raging fire, he won't be able to recover for at least 2 years. Later, immediately bring the troops to wipe out the Bai family. I want to force him out. He couldn't kill him, but he could prevent him from appearing by Yun Luofeng's side. In these 2 years, he didn't even have time to recuperate. How could he find trouble with Yun Luofeng? Cough. Yun Xiao coughed as she clutched her chest tightly with her hand. Her tightly furrowed brows showed that she was in pain. Even if he obtained the Netherworld fire, if he used it, there would still be a very strong side effect. However, only the power of the Netherworld fire could allow Bai Su to recover from his injuries in 2 years. Master. Qin Yuan turned pale with fright and called out anxiously. It's all right. Yun Xiao gradually lowered her hand from her chest and replied expressionlessly, don't let her know about this. Qin Yuan's heart was moved. For the sake of the mistress, Master had really let go of everything. Not only had he followed her willingly, he couldn't even bear to let her know about his injuries. Chapter 671. Perhaps, in this world, only the mistress could subdue the master. Under the dark night, a piercing sound broke the silence of the night. In the air, the woman in red was carrying a ragged little boy in her arms as she quickly ran towards a nearby mountain path. The little boy was dressed in a loose robe that did not match his small body. His long hair was longer than his body and reached his ankles. He looked like he was carved from jade and was extremely adorable. Only his large eyes contained an evil and cold light, and he had a maturity that was beyond his age. Young master, we're already thousands of miles away from that place. The woman in red frowned slightly and a look of worry flashed across her beautiful face. But, young master, you've been severely injured, which has caused your body to become like this. The boy lowered his eyes and looked at his little hands and feet. A cold light flashed across his eyes. The Ghost Emperor has caused me to become like this. One day, I'll seek revenge on him. However, the most important thing now is to find a place to heal. I'm afraid that I won't be able to recover without at least 2 years. Even though the little boy's voice was soft and adorable, his tone was serious. He raised his brows slightly and turned to the woman in red next to him. Jinyu, bring me away from this place immediately. Based on the Ghost Emperor's power, he'll probably find us in no time. Yes, young master. Jinyu's face was filled with respect. However, there was reverence in her eyes when she looked at the man. During this period of time, there was an upheaval on the mainland. It was said that the Bai family had provoked the Ghost Emperor for some unknown reason. As a result, the Ghost Emperor's subordinates immediately went to flatten the entire Bai family. That day, there were endless cries of grief and blood flowed like a river in the Bai family. Even so, as the young master of the Bai family, Bai Su, did not show himself. As a result, no one knew where he had gone. At this moment, Jinyu slowly walked into a cave. She was dressed in red and was extremely gorgeous. Her beauty was incomparable. Her beauty was not the same as Fang Ye's graceful beauty. She also did not have the coquettish charm of the owner of the bamboo building, Chun Niang. Instead, there was a sense of aloofness and gentleness on her beautiful face only appeared when she saw the little boy in the cave. Young master, it's time to drink your medicine. Her voice was very gentle, and her beautiful eyes were fixed on the little boy, as if he was the only thing in her eyes. Put it down. Bai Su sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. His jade-like face was filled with solemnity. After a long time, he finally opened his eyes and sighed, I wonder how long it will take for my body to return to its original state. Young master, Jinyu gently pursed her red lips. This subordinate has something to report. The Ghost Emperor, he destroyed the Bai family. Oh! Bai Su raised her eyebrows without batting an eyelid. So be it. After all, the members of the Bai clan are merely my puppets. If I did not need to use the Bai clan to gradually recover my strength, I would not have stayed in the Bai clan for so many years. But, young master, Jinyu, how many years have you been with me? Bai Su raised his head slightly and his demonic eyes fell upon the woman's beautiful face. For so many years, you have followed me everywhere. It must have been hard on you. Jinyu's heart suddenly moved and a crimson blush flashed across her beautiful face. Young master, Ever since you saved me and brought me back to the Bai clan, my life has belonged to you. I can do anything for you. Chapter 672. For him, she would not regret it even if she was consigned to eternal damnation. However, 20 years ago, when Bai Su had picked her up, this man had looked like this. 20 years later, he was still the same. It was as if the passage of time did not leave any trace on his body. He was a legend who would never grow old. Unless, when he was seriously injured, he would turn into a little boy. At other times, he would always look like he was in his 20s. He had never changed. Jinyu, you don't have to call me young master anymore. From now on, the Bai family will no longer exist. Bai Su curled the corners of his lips and said. Jinyu joined her fists. Yes, my lord. Jinyu, in a few days, we will leave this place and head for the continent of no return. The continent of no return was the other end of the forest of no return. It was also the place where Yun Xiao's mother was. The reason why it was called the continent of no return was because it was the same as the forest of no return. No one who had been there had returned. No matter where my lord is going, I will follow my lord for the rest of my life. Jinyu raised her head and looked straight at Bai Su. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination. Her life was given by his lord. Even if he wanted to take it back one day, she would not regret it. On this continent, my strength recovers too slowly. Only when I go there, will I have the ability to fight against the Ghost Emperor. Bai Su narrowed his eyes slightly and the corners of his lips curled into a smile. What's more, I heard that the Ghost Emperor's mother is also there. Jinyu asked in surprise, the Ghost Emperor's mother? That's right. Bai Su's finger gently tapped on the stone table in front of him and he smiled coldly. Although I've left that place for a long time, I can still get all the information about that place. When the time comes, we can make a fuss in front of the Ghost Emperor's family. What does young master want this subordinate to do? Jinyu frowned slightly and asked. It's very simple. The Ghost Emperor's mother has adopted a daughter. At that time, find a chance to get close to that woman and spread the good things about the Ghost Emperor in front of her. It's best if she falls in love with the Ghost Emperor. In this way, I will have the chance to separate the Ghost Emperor and Yun Luofeng. Looking at the little boy's gloomy expression, Jinyu's heart surged with jealousy. But in the end, she suppressed all the bitterness in her heart. Yes, master. Since she was willing to do anything for his lord, that included helping him pursue other women, even if the woman his lord loved was in danger, his lord wanted her to resist the danger for that woman. She would not hesitate to save her. Jinyu, the little boy stood up and looked up at Jinyu, who was higher than her. His slender fingers gently lifted her chin and moved close to her ear. He said in a very ambiguous tone, when I'm done, I will never treat you badly. Jinyu's heart beat instantly, so fast that she felt that her heart was about to leave her chest. She bit her lips tightly and stared at Bai Su with deep emotions in her beautiful eyes. My lord, as long as I can be by your side, I'm already satisfied. I have no other requests. All right, Bai Su let go of Jinyu and smiled evilly. Now, pack up. We'll set off immediately before the Ghost Emperor finds us. After speaking, he flung his sleeves and quickly walked out of the cave. Jinyu looked at Bai Su's disappearing figure obsessively, and her beautiful eyes were filled with deep admiration. Even though his lord has become like this, he's still so handsome. In this life, being able to accompany his lord is already a blessing that I've cultivated for several lifetimes. So, I dare not hope for anything else. Chapter 673. Yun Luofeng did not know anything about the situation in the cave. After settling the matter with the Doctors' Association, she followed Yun Qingya back to the general's mansion. The old man did not expect Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao to return at the same time. Even Yun Qingya had rushed back at this moment. He was so excited that tears streamed down his face. He pulled Yun Xiao and Yun Qingya to drink. This was a rare indulgence for them. Yun Luofeng did not stop them. Instead, he asked Qing Yang to bring them some sobering soup so that they wouldn't get drunk. After doing all this, she returned to her room to rest. It was only when night fell that the cold figure walked into the room under the moonlight. The moment the man appeared, Yun Luofeng had already woken up from her sleep. However, she still closed her eyes and did not move at all. For a long time, she could not feel the man's movements. She could only feel that this man was quietly standing at the head of her bed. His breathing was very light, as if he was afraid that he would disturb her. Feng'er. The man's voice was low and hoarse, but it carried a solemn vow. In this life, I will protect you by your side. I will never let anyone hurt you. Yun Luofeng's brows were slightly moved. At this moment, a gentle kiss landed on her eyelashes, filled with endless love. The man's kiss did not have the slightest hint of alcohol. Instead, it was filled with a fragrance that was exceptionally comfortable. Suddenly, the young girl who was lying on the bed opened her eyes. Her dark eyes were filled with smiles as she said, "Yun Xiao, didn't you accompany Master Dongfang for a drink? Why did you come back so quickly?" The old man had no other hobbies in his life. The only things he loved were wine and tea. If someone accompanied him to drink, he would not return for the entire night. Furthermore, in order to welcome second uncle, the old man had even called a group of scoundrels. Logically speaking, they shouldn't be able to return tonight. Because I beat up the princess of the royal family. Yun Xiao's expression was serious as she spoke as a matter of course. Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose speechlessly. Did she provoke you? Yes. Yun Xiao's hoarse voice was magnetic. Her gaze kept drifting over to me. And then, I threw her out. Yun Xiao stared unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng. Only you can see me. In this world, only Yun Luofeng could look at him more than once. Even if other women only glanced at him, he would involuntarily feel a wave of disgust. Yun Luofeng raised his hand and patted Yun Xiao's face, the corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile. In the future, when the old man asks you to accompany him to drink, just ignore him. Let him cry and then hang himself. All right. Yun Xiao's voice became more and more hoarse, but it was so pleasant to the ears that it made people unable to extricate themselves. I'll listen to you. He had always listened to Yun Luofeng and would never reject any of her suggestions. Also, in the future, no matter if you're the Ghost Emperor or Yun Xiao, you'll have to wear a mask to prevent others from having improper thoughts about you. Yun Luofeng curled his lips and said flatteringly. Yun Xiao nodded slightly. I also have this thought. Looking at Yun Xiao's serious expression, the corners of Yun Luofeng's lips twitched. I was just joking. If you were to wear a mask, how would I be able to see your face at all times? Furthermore, you won't feel comfortable wearing a mask. She had indeed been joking. Who knew that Yun Xiao would suddenly become so serious? Chapter 674. Yun Xiao's gaze was fixed on Yun Luofeng. His tone was firm and unquestionable. I'll take anything you say seriously. He would never think that she was joking, because he would act on every word she said. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and slowly climbed up from the bed. She raised her head and gently hooked the man's chin with her fingers. Actually, your serious expression is very moving. She loved Yun Xiao because of his sincerity and seriousness. How could she not be moved by a man like this? Yun Xiao's eyes never blinked as he stared at the young girl in front of him. I think that your expression is very moving all the time. A dangerous light flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes when he heard this. He asked with a half-smile, where did you learn this from? Yun Xiao answered honestly, from a book. What book? Qin Yuan wrote it. How to Win a Woman's Favor. That book was indeed written by Qin Yuan for him. The contents were all about how to win a woman's favor. Oh. Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. Then how do you think I should win my favor? You should be able to work in the kitchen, enter the hall, get rid of your rival in love, and keep your chastity. The corners of Yun Xiao's lips curled up slightly. If you ask me to go east, I can't go west. If you ask me to chase after a dog, I can't chase after a cat. Also, you have to say sweet nothings. Yun Xiao paused and continued. I can do all these. But he could only do it for her alone. Millimeter, Yun Luofeng nodded in satisfaction. This Qin Yuan is better than what Lin Qiong taught you. At least he didn't give you any erotic pictures to study with me, and he didn't ask you to offer your body. If Qin Yuan heard Yun Luofeng's words, he would definitely be so moved that tears streamed down his cheeks. His efforts over the past few days had finally paid off. Just based on what Mistress had said, Master would not scare him so often in the future. In the eyes of Yun Xiao's subordinates, their master was a very frightening existence. Especially the cold aura that he emitted at any time, it scared them to the point that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It was only in front of the mistress that the master would restrain all his hostility and become unprecedentedly obedient. That's right. Qin Yuan used the words obedient to describe Yun Xiao. It was precisely because he was well aware of Yun Luofeng's position in Yun Xiao's heart that he would tell him how to curry favor with the mistress. Even if he didn't say it, his master would do it himself. Yun Xiao, Yun Luofeng smiled faintly, I have one more thing to ask you. When you went drinking with the old man and the others, why was the imperial princess there? Yun Xiao looked at Yun Luofeng. That woman is the Grand Tutor's disciple. Grand Tutor was invited to drink this time, so she followed him. Moreover, Grand Tutor wants her to marry Yun Qingya. The man's words were already very obvious. The Grand Tutor had his eyes on Yun Qingya. He originally wanted the princess to come and matchmake Yun Qingya, but who knew that the princess did not take a fancy to second uncle. Instead, she took a fancy to Yun Xiao. Thus, she angered Yun Xiao and was thrown out by Yun Xiao. What did the old man say? Yun Luofeng's voice deepened. Yun Luofeng didn't know if it was an illusion, but after she finished speaking, a hint of a smile seemed to flash across Yun Xiao's face. The old man said that he wants to sever all ties with the Grand Tutor and tell the master and disciple to scram as far away as possible. Chapter 675. Yun Luofeng was speechless. This had always been the old man's style. Arrogant and domineering. Yet, it made one feel helpless. I'm sleepy, Yun Luofeng stretched lazily. The old man will handle this matter, we don't have to worry about it. Even if the person that the imperial princess likes is not you but second uncle, I still won't agree. After all, my second aunt has already been set to be Ning Xin. Knowing second uncle's personality, he would never like a spoiled and willful imperial princess. After she had spoken, Yun Luofeng did not pursue the matter any further. She gently narrowed her eyes as she looked at Yun Xiao with a smile on her lips. Do you plan to sleep with me or go out? I'll follow you. The man did not say it clearly, but the meaning behind his words was clear. He wanted to share a bed with Yun Luofeng. Even if they could not do anything now, he would be satisfied as long as he could hug her to sleep. Aren't you afraid that you can't hold it in? Yun Luofeng looked at Yun Xiao with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Yun Xiao was silent for a moment before she replied, I can hold it in. All right, then you can go to bed. Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes and the smile on her face grew wider. The next day, the sky had just brightened when the old man's angry roar sounded from the great hall. What are you doing here? Yun Luofeng had just stepped out of the great hall when she heard the old man's angry voice. She gently raised her brows and walked in. Grandfather, why are you so angry so early in the morning? The young girl's voice slowly drifted into the hall, causing the old man's brows to gradually calm down. Feng, why are you here? The old man smiled as he watched the young girl walk into the great hall. His face carried an affectionate smile. Yun Luofeng did not seem to see the old man and the young girl in the great hall as she slowly walked towards the old man. Your voice was so loud, I'm afraid that everyone in the general's residence could hear you. How could I not come? Sigh, the old man sighed, it's actually nothing big, I didn't think that I would disturb you. Grandfather, Yun Luofeng smiled wickedly, even if you didn't disturb me, I still wanted to see who dared to have designs on my man. As she spoke, She looked at the old man and the young man in the hall. The old man's beard was white, and his wrinkled face was filled with helplessness. His back was bent, and his aged figure looked extremely pitiful as he stood in the breeze. Kneeling beside him was a young girl dressed in luxurious clothes. Her face was slightly pale and her eyes were filled with tears of grievance. She bit her lips and did not make a sound. Needless to say, this young lady was the younger sister of the current emperor, the sixth princess of Long Yuan country. Her expression was one of grievance and humiliation. It was as if for her, having a princess like her kneel to a general was something shameful. However, it wasn't only the Grand Tutor's idea to come and apologize. Even her imperial brother had forced her to come. She had no choice but to come and beg for forgiveness. Lady Yun, this matter is indeed the sixth princess's fault. She did not intentionally glance at your guard. Because of this, I have specially brought her here to apologize. As he spoke, the Grand Tutor deliberately emphasized the words guard. However, he did not notice that after these words were spoken, Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened slightly. The Grand Tutor hurriedly pushed the sixth princess and shouted sternly, "What are you waiting for? Quickly apologize to Lady Yun. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.